I'd like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting for May 23rd, 2018. Roll call, please.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Great crowd tonight, folks. This is what we like to see. For those of you who can't see us because there's television, this is a very crowded room with a lot of residents here for a couple of different reasons. So we're very pleased to see everybody. We're going to start off, obviously, as we always do, with our Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask that Kamlesh Patel, who's a representative of the BAPS Temple down the block, who has been a great friend to Hatfield Township, begin our Pledge of Allegiance, and then, of course, we all jump in after that. So there was a second reason that I asked Kamlesh to do the pledge, and that's because I have an announcement with regard to BAPS charities. Many of you may know that the walk, unfortunately because of the weather, the charity walk that they always have every year down at the Acme, it starts in the Acme and goes through Lansdale, has been rescheduled to Sunday, June 10th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at School Road Park. And one of the beneficiaries of the walk is the Calmer Volunteer Fire Company. And for those of you who have never been a part of this walk or unfamiliar with it, let me tell you that first off, it's one of the most successful walks in the entire area. Second is, the beneficiaries have not only been Calmer Fire Company, but Hatfield Fire Company and some other local, Souderton, Telford, some other local public entities. And so it's been wonderful to see the entire community come out to that walk. They raised quite a bit of money for the public services that we support as well. So we want to thank you for the many years of all the work you've done that. And again, we want everyone to support that. Sunday, June 10th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. right here at School Road Park. All right. Okay. With that, we have some, before we really get into the meat of our meeting, we have some housekeeping items. First is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion by Commissioner Rogers?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda? For those of you who are looking, it's either on the table or over there up on the board. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we can move forward with that agenda. Couple of consent items. Is there a motion to move into the record the consent items listed in your agenda? By Commissioner Thomas. Second by Vice President Hughes. Those items are the Board of Commissioners regular meeting minutes of April 25, the Board of Commissioners workshop meeting for May 9, the Treasurer's report for the month of April, and the bills payable, paid bills in the amount of $35,537.66, and unpaid bills in the amount of $607,016.18. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of moving those items into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is moved into the record. Okay, folks, citizens' comments. Now, I suspect that we're going to have citizens' comments on this rezone, but we're not looking for them now. Normally, we would do citizens' comments for agenda items right now, but we're not going to do that. If you have any, all comments about the rezone, we're going to have after the hearing is closed, and everyone's going to have an opportunity to speak. And we'll walk you through the guidelines and kind of the expectations of how it'll be done at that time. But if anyone has any agenda items that are not rezone related, now's the time to come up to the podium. All right, I don't see anyone running up there, so we're going to move to our public hearing, which is our, there's only a couple of items on our agenda, but we know this because we know this is going to take a bit of time. I'm going to hand this off to our solicitor, very capable solicitor. Before I hand off the gavel, so to speak, I just want everyone to understand, during the hearing, and then especially after the hearing, we have an expectation of a certain kind of protocol here in Hatfield. For as long as I've been a township commissioner, as long as the people up here on this dais have been township commissioner, we have always made every effort to hold meetings, hold hearings in as civil and dignified a manner as possible. Now, I have no reason to think anyone in this room would act in any other way, and we expect that no one else would act any other way. So what does that mean? That means during the hearing, please stay quiet and calm. After the hearing, and I'll reiterate this just before we have open comments, public comment, no one is to be antagonistic towards each other. There's no cheering for one side or the other. There's none of that. Last and most important, for those of you who are here tonight, please understand that there is no decision that will be made here tonight. That is not our process. Tonight is the hearing for the applicant to submit what has been essentially a revised application for us to consider. The expectation that the rest of the board has, and I'll defer to our solicitor, is that afterwards, an ordinance is proposed, printed in the newspaper, and then we expect that 2 meetings from now, which means our second meeting in June, we would make a decision. Unless there's some intervening factor that would change that. It's possible, especially given the life of what this process has taken, but not expected. But that's the time frame that we're expecting. So folks, no decision will be made here tonight. Does everybody follow? I'm hoping that I'm going to get some nodding of heads. Okay, good. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to our solicitor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. A motion's in order to adjourn the meeting and open the hearing.
The chair will make the motion.
Okay. Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, good evening, folks. We're having 2 hearings this evening. The first is going to be on 2 ordinances that have to do with the zoning ordinance and the zoning map of Hatfield Township. The first ordinance is ordinance number 678. It's a text amendment to the zoning ordinance of the township, which amends the RA2 zoning district. It permits things such as a cluster option development with a required 20% open space and 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, along with other criteria. It also permits a religious use by special exception. The second ordinance is ordinance number 679. This is the ordinance that actually rezones 2 properties to the RA2 district. The first being 3515 Cowpath, that's the Walters track, from a split zone property of LI and RA1 to a unified RA2. And the second is 2021 Township Line Road, the BAPS property, from LI to RA2. The following exhibits will be marked for the board. B1 is correspondence with the proposed ordinances to the newspaper on May 4, 2018. The ads were run on May 8th and May 15th. B2 is a proof of publication of those advertisements. B3 is a certificate from the Law Library in Norristown for ordinance number 678 that's dated May 9, 2018. B4 is a certificate from the Law Library for ordinance number 678 that's dated May 9, 2018. B5 is a sketch plan prepared by Kennedy and Associates. It's dated April 10, 2018. B6 is an illustrative plan prepared by Kennedy and Associates dated April 10, 2018. B7, a buffer detail prepared by Kennedy and Associates dated April 10, 2018. B8 is a BAPS property plan by Kennedy and Associates dated April 5, 2018. B9 is a February 14 traffic planning and design trip generation / traffic comparison dated February 14, 2018. B10 is a traffic impact study prepared by Traffic Planning and Design. B11, an environmental impact statement prepared by Holmes Cunningham dated April 9, 2018. And B12 is a financial impact analysis prepared by Glack and Thomas Panzak dated April 9, 2018. And B13 is a review letter by the Montgomery County Planning Commission dated May 23, 2018. This application was sent to the Township Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission as required by the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. The property was properly posted. We've been here before, folks, a year ago with a previous application, an application that had to do with a text amendment as well and a rezoning. That was back last year, and then the applicant revised its application, came before this board informally on March 14 to describe the changes they proposed for the property. After feedback from the commission and from the members of the public, the applicant has submitted a new application, hence the hearing this evening. These are hearings on ordinances 678 and 679. I don't know if the applicant is proposing any revisions to what was originally proposed and advertised based on reviews from the township and the county. I have one revision that I would like to propose to the ordinances as I review them. The effective date at the end of the ordinances follows the second-class township code with an effective date of 5 days from the date of enactment. We should revise that to make it effective immediately in line with the first-class township code. Other than that, I propose no amendments. So, folks, we normally don't have this many people here. It's nice to see you. What we're not here to talk about tonight are issues having to do with the development of the land, the dirt itself, a land development application. The only thing in front of the board this evening is the use and the criteria that the applicant would like to utilize to then make an application for subdivision and land development. That process is separate and distinct from this process. It is long. It has many reviews by the township engineers, lighting consultant, planner, the planning commission, the county, and then there's reviews done by the township planning commission, and then it would come here in front of the board in due course. So none of that, stormwater management, lighting, landscaping, water, sewer, any of those things are not the subject of tonight's hearing. So if I feel anybody during our comment or question area getting into areas that are not the purview of this hearing, pardon me, I will interrupt you and ask you to save that for that separate process. The applicant is proposing these ordinances is here and represented by counsel. I see there's exhibit books here on the dais, Mr. Bartle. I'm sure you're going to walk us through those. I see you have a number of witnesses in the front row with you. Should you need to call them, you can do that in due course. Also present this evening is Mr. Capuccio. He's representing a neighboring property owner, William Forrest, in opposition to this application. So what we do is we let the attorney for the applicant go first. We'll let Mr. Capuccio present what he would like to present. The commissioners can chime in whenever they feel like it, or at the end of when both counsel are done. And then there'll be a portion of the evening where we ask you if you have any questions or comments that you would like the board to hear, or answers you would like to have from either the applicant or Mr. Capuccio, or make any statements you think the board should understand. Now, there's rules separate and distinct from this hearing for the next hearing, so I'll describe that to you when we get there. But that's the sum and substance of what we're doing here. Mr. Bartle, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
And please you have to use the microphones because we videotape.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Frank Bartle, and I represent Envision Land Use, the equitable owner of the Walter property located at 3515 Cowpath Road, Hatfield Township, and the BAPS Temple, the owner of 2021 Township Line Road in Hatfield Township. As you may recall, I have been before the township a number of times in the past 2 years on behalf of Envision Land Use to present our request to rezone the Walter property from its current zoning, which is split zoned between the LI Limited Industrial District and the RA1 Residential District, to a residential use in its entirety. We initially held a hearing over 2 nights in December of 2016 and January of 2017 to demonstrate the need for the requested rezone. We were last before the board in March of this year to give an update with respect to our progress. At the initial hearing, we demonstrated that the property is inappropriately zoned industrially because the property's location and size make it a terrible candidate for industrial development. It is simply too small in size and too far from major roads or highways to be a legitimate option for an industrial use. Further, we showed that industrial zoning of this property is inappropriate because an industrial use at this location would have a negative effect on the surrounding residential uses. Traffic generated by an industrial facility, including large trucks on the roads at all hours of the day and night, and the lights, noise, and odors of industry would have a significant impact on the surrounding homes. For these reasons, the Walter property is more appropriately zoned residential in its entirety. You will recall that at the time of our first hearings, we had presented our proposed rezone to the Hatfield Township Planning Commission, which voted unanimously to support our request. The Montgomery County Planning Commission also wrote in support of the rezoning. After the initial hearings, this board suggested that we consult further with the neighbors and perhaps make improvements to the plan based on those conversations. We are back this evening because we have made modifications to the plan to address questions presented by the board, the township staff, and our neighbors since that time. This hearing is a continuation of the previous hearing, and so in an effort to avoid unnecessary redundancy and to save this board's valuable time, I would simply ask that the notes of testimony and exhibits or the video of our presentation from the previous hearings be incorporated into the record for this hearing. If that meets with your approval, I would ask that that be done.
Yeah. Mr. Capuccio, do you have an objection to that?
I do.
Could you have to use the mic, unfortunately? Do we have the handheld that we could?
Ms. Pianzio, thank you. I do. Mark Capuccio for Forced Family Partnership. My concern is that, and I understand we're looking at a legislative hearing first, the zoning change, but certainly I think that any exhibits that would be submitted to the hearing tonight and any testimony that would have been included, testimony about those exhibits should be presented this evening. I did contact Mr. Wirth this afternoon because I had found out about this yesterday morning. So I would object to that taking place, and certainly will be objecting at the appropriate time at the conditional use hearing.
Okay. Well, this is a legislative hearing, as you suggested, so the board can take in any information that it seems pertinent. So we're going to overrule your objection and take the exhibits, the testimony, and the video in and make it part of this record.
Thank you. I will stress that the plan and zoning request that we're presenting this evening is largely the same as that which we previously presented and was modified only to the extent necessary to address your concerns and questions and neighboring suggestions. Our proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance is included in our packet as Exhibit A2, and the updated sketch plan is marked as A3. We presented this updated plan with ordinance amendments to the Township Planning Commission last week, which once again unanimously voted to support our application. So we have their support unanimously, both with respect to that which we previously brought to you and that which was amended to be the plan most recently. We will be presenting evidence this evening to explain our requested zoning ordinance amendments in further detail, but I would first like to provide you a brief description of those changes to ensure clarity. First, the BAPS temple. The first change from our previous application is that our requested rezone now includes an additional property. Since the previous meeting and hearings, Envision Land Use has had ongoing conversations with the leadership of the BAPS temple, which neighbors the Walter property on Township Line Road and is also zoned industrial. As a result of those discussions, Envision and the BAPS leadership have come to an agreement on a number of issues and have decided to work together for the benefit of both the proposed residential development and the BAPS community. You will recall that you specifically asked us to reach such an agreement with the temple in our discussions with the neighbors that surrounded the property in question. Our rezone request now includes both the Walter property and the BAPS temple property located at 2021 Township Line Road, and I now represent both Envision and the BAPS temple in this effort. As part of the proposed development, Envision will transfer roughly 2.3 acres of land to the BAPS temple to provide a buffer between the temple and the homes, and to also allow for the expansion of their worship space and the construction of a new kitchen. That transferred piece of land will also contain stormwater management facilities that will be used both by the temple and the residential development. We have included a plan that we have marked as Exhibit A4 that shows the proposed expansion of the BAPS lot and facility in more detail than in the sketch plan. This development is truly a win-win situation for the temple and the proposed neighborhood. I will note that the plan for the BAPS expansion shows two additions, one 3,000 square feet in size and the other 10,000 square feet in size. These plans are not yet final, and the second proposed addition will be between 10,000 and 12,000 square feet. You will hear this evening that it complies dimensionally with all requirements of the ordinance in either scenario. Zoning district change. Next, you'll notice that we have changed which zoning district we are requesting. We had previously requested a rezone of the Walter property from its current split zoning to RA1 in its entirety. We now request that both the Walter property and the BAPS property be rezoned to the RA2 residential rather than RA1, and request an amendment to the RA2 district to create a new religious use and a new cluster option in that district. The reason to change our request from RA1 to RA2 is simple. After conversations with Township staff, we understand that there is much less undeveloped RA2 land in the Township than RA1. This means that our requested changes to the zoning code will have less of an impact on land in the Township that has yet to be developed, and provides a more nuanced approach to zoning to address some of the Township's and neighbors' concerns. Effectively, it's the same development that could exist in an RA1 district with the appropriate modifications and changes that we suggest. But due to the fact that there's less land in the RA2 than in the RA1 township-wide, it was determined to be in your best interest by staff that we do it in that fashion. I will note that the proposed cluster option will allow for the preservation of open space for the benefit of the township as a whole, and for the local neighbors. Under the cluster option, 20% of the total developable area of a parcel of land shall be preserved as open space. You will see in the updated plans that we are now able to preserve 8.39 acres of open space, which is 26%, significantly greater than that requirement. Additionally, I will point out that much of the 2.3 acre parcel that Envision will be deeding to the temple will remain open space as well. Therefore, although not part of the residential development, the effective open space created by the development will be even greater than 26%. Plan changes. With the addition of the BAPS parcel to our rezone request, and with the use of the proposed cluster option, we have updated our sketch plan for the development. We have included a plan which is marked in the packet as Exhibit A6 that identifies the changes we have made. This plan is a copy of the previous sketch plan, which has been marked up to show those changes. First, we have marked on the plan the area where we will be providing the 2.3 acres to the BAPS temple for their expansion, as I previously mentioned. So that's listed as a change. Also, at the request of the Township's traffic engineers, McMahon Associates, and to ensure the proper management of traffic with the new development, we have marked on the plan where we propose to offer for dedication sufficient land on our property to allow for the widening of Cowpath Road. We have also marked where we will be providing significant buffering between the proposed development and the existing homes on Cowpath Road. Additionally, I have included a buffer detail plan, which we have marked as Exhibit A7, which shows this buffering in greater detail. It is essentially a blow-up of the buffered section of the main plan. Finally, we show where we have agreed to install a traffic light at the intersection of Cowpath Road and Durstein Road, and to provide for widening of the intersection with the right-of-way. Our proposed development as revised shows 65 units, but has less density per acre than the surrounding residential neighborhoods. As mentioned, we have focused on preserving significant open space while proposing larger and more expensive homes than others in the area. The development will therefore complement the surrounding existing residential neighborhoods well. Impact statements. Finally, we have included with the packet the fiscal impact statement, the transportation report, and the environmental impact statement as required by the Township's code. The fiscal impact statement and the environmental impact statement are virtually identical to those presented over a year ago. For this reason, I won't be calling the experts who prepared the statements as witnesses, but they are present this evening to answer any questions from the board. We have also included the new transportation impact study, which we submitted with the application along with the trip generation letter that we had previously submitted to demonstrate that the traffic impact of our updated plan has not changed significantly from the plan we had previously presented. At this time, I have pre-marked certain of the exhibits, and I'd like to have them marked and entered into the record as we go through the testimony. A1 is the rezone request. A2 is a proposed amendment to the RA2 residential zoning district. A3 is the sketch plan. A4 is the BAPS property concept plan. A5 is the previous plan. A6 is the exhibit showing the changes to that plan. A7 is the buffer detail plan. A8 is the curriculum vitae of John H. Kennedy, AICP. A9 is the fiscal impact statement. A10 is the environmental impact statement. A11 is the transportation impact study without appendices. A12 is the previous trip generation letter. And A13 is the curriculum vitae of Michael Borski, Jr. At this time, I would ask the board to allow us to consider our standing established in light of the fact that we are the equitable owner of the property with respect to envisioned land use, and that testimony has been well documented in the record. And also with respect to the BAPS temple, in light of the fact that I represent that entity here.
Mr. Capuccio, any objection to any of the exhibits? Okay. All right, we'll admit them.
Standing?
Standing's fine.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to call Mr. Robert Rosenthal to testify. I guess technically you're still under oath as this is a continued hearing, but they may want to have you sworn again.
Can you face the court reporter and be sworn, please?
Yes, I do. Mr. Rosenthal, will you please state your full name and business address for the record?
Certainly, my full name is Robert Mitchell Rosenthal. My address is 485 Devon Park Drive, Wayne, PA 19087.
And that's Suite 106, right?
Suite 106.
You are a member in Envision Land Use, is that correct?
That is correct.
And Envision Land Use is an LLC, is that right?
That is also correct.
And that's a Pennsylvania limited liability company.
Yes, it is.
And Envision Land Use is one of the applicants in this matter, is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Rosenthal, what is your educational background?
My educational background is graduated from Springfield High School, Montgomery County, Temple University, and Delaware Law School.
As the applicant, did you prepare the application that's before the board this evening with my help?
Yes, I did.
Is Exhibit A1 a true and correct copy of the application filed in this matter?
Yes, it is.
To the best of your knowledge, is the information that was provided in the application true and correct?
It is true and correct.
And if I took you through the application and asked you each and every question that appears in the application that we've submitted to the board, you would testify that that was all correct?
I certainly would.
Now, you attended the hearings, the two hearings previously held by the Board of Commissioners, and testified on behalf of Envision Land Use in those hearings. Is that right?
That is correct as well.
And since the last hearing, we've made certain modifications to the plan, and the requested rezone is based on the recommendations and questions of the Township's Board of Commissioners, the Township staff, the neighbors, and the neighbors to the property. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Exhibit A3 is the updated sketch plan for the proposed development, including those changes. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Now, first, at the request of the Township, you've had conversations with the leadership of the BAPS Temple and have come to an agreement to benefit both your residential development and the BAPS community. Is that right?
Yes, we have.
Can you please describe that agreement, sir?
Certainly, we had wonderful conversations about the future of BAPS and their hope and desire to add and grow, and for that they need additional ground, and we were able to work out a very amicable agreement in order to do that and work with them and help them in their land needs is something we do as a regular basis.
And you are transferring to them roughly 2.3 acres, actually it's almost exactly 2.3 acre piece of land from the Walter Tract to the BAPS Temple to provide a buffer between the temple and the new homes, and also to allow for an expansion of their worship space and construction of a new kitchen site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That new piece of land, as I've said in my opening, will also contain the stormwater management facilities for both the temple and the residential development. Is that right?
That is right as well.
And all those things are shown on one of our plans. Is that right?
They are.
And that piece of land being transferred to the temple and the proposed buffering, stormwater facilities, and expansion of the temple are actually shown on Exhibit A4. Is that right?
That is correct.
The BAPS Temple has requested to become a party to this request for a rezone and have requested that their property be added to the application as well. Is that right?
Yes.
We have also modified the plan at the suggestion of the Township to utilize a cluster option in the residential development. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you please describe what Envision proposes to do with the property once rezoned?
We intend to create a community of 65 homes adjacent to the BAPS temple, and work and create a landscape buffer not only with BAPS but also with the neighbors along Cowpath Road.
And the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet, and the average lot size on our plan is 11,267 square feet in size. Is that correct?
That is correct as well.
And the type and size of home you propose to build hasn't changed since we were here last before the board. Is that correct?
No, it hasn't.
So any of the things that we presented at that time and any of the comments that were made and that we testified to at that time are all still applicable. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you please describe the types of homes that will be built as part of the development?
Certainly, they will be single-family detached homes, 3 and 4 bedrooms, all with 2-car garages, all with the latest materials that are both green and friendly, as well as economic.
There'll be two-story colonial style singles, is that correct?
Yes, they will.
And roughly 2,500 to 4,000 square feet in size, is that right?
Yes.
And they will have 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom and have 2-car garages, is that correct?
That's correct.
You expect those homes will be listed for $500,000 and up, is that correct?
Yes, we do.
And that was your testimony the last time you were here as well.
Yes, it was.
You were present and heard my opening statement this evening, is that right?
Yes.
Do you agree with what I said?
Wholeheartedly.
Will you adopt the statement as though it's your own testimony?
Yes.
Is there anything further that you would wish to add to that statement or any of your other testimony?
None.
Thank you. That's all I have with respect to Mr. Rosenthal.
Mr. Capuccio, do you have any questions? This is going to get awkward. Do we have to,
That's all we have.
Just one. Mr. Rosenthal, you indicated that it's going to be 2.3 acres that would be donated to the temple? Yes. And in addition, isn't it true that you've offered them $75,000 towards the temple? Thank you. No further questions.
board members, any questions?
I just wanted to clarify something. The last packet that we got, it said 2.68 acres. Did that get lowered to 2.38?
Yeah, the number is when we actually did the plan, the number is actually 2.3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. What's next, Frank?
I'd like to call Mr. Kamlesh Patel.
Patel? Would you please step forward, be sworn by the court reporter, and use this microphone? Thank you.
Mr. Patel, can you please state your full name and address for the record, sir, and your business address is fine.
Kamlesh C. Patel. Home address I'll give 131 Tudor Drive, North Wells, Pennsylvania 19454.
What is your position with the BAPS temple, sir?
With the BAPS of this local chapter, I'm an outreach admin.
And you were authorized to speak on behalf of the temple at this hearing this evening, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the temple is the owner of 2021 Township Line Road in Hatfield Township, which neighbors the Walter property, is that right?
That is correct.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to a plan that we've marked as Exhibit A3. Is the BAPS temple property correctly identified on that plan, sir?
Yes, it is.
And the temple is asked to become a part of the application to rezone its property to the RA2 residential district. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And if the township grants the rezone, the temple has come to an agreement with Envision Land Use that would transfer a 2.3-acre piece of the Walter property to the temple. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Capuccio mentioned a $75,000 figure that was to be given to the temple as well. Can you explain why it was necessary for that number to be included in the agreement and what it is that the temple is going to do with that money?
As suggested in that plan, we have two small development we are thinking of, or we are planning to do it. There is a little kitchen which will be built, which is 3,000 square feet towards the Township Line Road, if you see in that plan, dotted lines. And we are thinking of adding about 10,000 to 12,000 square feet of additional congregation worship area space. And to cover some of the expenses, Mr. Bob Rosenthal was kind enough, or Envision was kind enough to help out with a little bit of financial help towards the cause. Or
So the money we're talking about here will be used directly on site for the benefit of the neighborhood and the surrounding area by increasing the size of your worship facility, your kitchen facility, and sprucing up the entire area around that location.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And the township would use the transferred piece of land to provide a buffer between the temple and the new homes to allow for the the expansion of the temple's building and to contain stormwater management facilities for the temple property and the residential development. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Mr. Patel, I'd like to direct your attention to the document we've marked as Exhibit A4. Is this an accurate representation of the development of the BAPS Temple property as you intend to develop it if this rezone goes through?
Yes, that is correct.
What do you plan to do with the 2 building additions shown on the plan?
We are thinking of adding a little bit more worship space for our congregation, which is already too small to start with now these days. And the area which is dotted in the back, that will be a little bit kitchen area facility. Our usual practice on Sundays, we provide the dinner to everybody, and we need a little bit more area now to expand that kitchen so we can accommodate a little bit better facility in terms of cooking the food and all that.
So it'll essentially be the same congregation, just enjoying a bigger space.
Bigger space.
You're a little crowded where you are right now.
That is true.
And to accomplish this on the expanded lot, the temple, with my help, has applied to the Hatfield Township Zoning Hearing Board for a special exception to allow for the religious use on the property. Is that correct?
Yes.
And right now, you have a religious use on that property, but it's there as a non-conforming use, not in compliance with zoning. Is that right?
Yes.
You would consider this rezoning and the proposed development of your property and the neighboring Walter property to be a positive for the temple and its members?
Absolutely. Since we are a little tight on the space-wise and the facility-wise, so we were actually, and there is no room as such. Our plot size is very small at this moment and doesn't provide any room for expansion. So we were thinking of actually physically moving to a different location. But, and Hatfield is our home since last 10 years, but now that this new development has been offered and it looks pretty promising to us, which will allow us to put that new additional building and which will satisfy the needs for extra space for our worship area and for the kitchen. So we are very excited to have this development going forward, and we don't want to have to move and stay where we are and make our Hatfield as a home again.
So you think that Hatfield's the best location for your home?
That is absolutely correct. And to add to that, actually, in last 5 years, there are a few people who live here. Dipun, if you may stand up. There are 10 families who have lived, they have moved in about half a mile distance. Darpan kya hai? These are the people who have lived here in about half a mile distance across the street from Cowpath Road. The THP construction they have, and they have moved here only specifically because of the church here. And if we expand this and make it bigger, and if we have this housing complex coming, probably there might be a few more new residents who will be, your houses will be sold as well in that case. So that'll be a better opportunity and great thing for us.
Mr. Patel, I noticed that that upon your direction and pointing at some of the members of your temple, people in the audience stood up immediately. They obviously know who you are and recognize why you're here this evening, and a little bit about this application, maybe a lot about this application. Can you ask for me to have the people that are here, that are part of your temple congregation, please stand so that the board recognizes just how many people have come here tonight in support of the application.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Mr. Patel, would the temple prefer to have a 65-unit single-family home development as its neighbor on the Walter tract, or an industrial type use?
I would rather have a residential complex. I think we have lived in this area for quite some time, and we have been good neighbors, if I remember, and would like to have more families. As I said, there might be a few more homes will be sold, have more family members come in, so more the house will be a lot easier for us. And as I promised, we have been a great neighbor, and we will be the great neighbor always. So yes, I prefer the residential rather than the industrial.
It doesn't seem to be much of a surprise that people would rather have homes next to their place of worship than perhaps an industrial use. Is that a fair statement?
Hang on.
Yeah. Or objection.
Well, it's informal, as you know, Mark. The rules of evidence don't really apply here. So I think Mr. Bartle is doing us some service in trying to summarize some things to move it along, because this isn't the first time the board has heard a lot of the testimony. So it will overrule it. Keep going, Frank.
Would that be a fair statement that the residential would be a much more compatible use to your place of worship than the industrial?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. That's all I have of Mr. Patel.
Mr. Capuccio.
You want to get over here? Sure.
I only have 2 or 3 questions. Mr. Patel, good evening. You indicated that you're a resident, am I correct, of North Wales?
I'm in North Wales, yes, correct.
So you're not a Hatfield Township resident, am I correct?
But I'm a full-time member of BAPS Temple, and
Of the temple.
That is correct.
Thank you. You had indicated that you had considered moving from the location, is that correct?
We had thought about it, yes.
And when the individuals who were here in the room this evening stood, who are members of the temple, could I ask that those who are residents of the township, would they please stand? Just residents. Thank you. Thank you. With regard to the issue of LI zoning, you said that you would prefer to have residential zoning next to you, correct? But the fact is, when you moved into this area, when the temple was built, you are actually zoned LI, and in addition, you knew that the rest of the property abutting it was, in fact, LI. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mark. Board members, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Frank?
That's all I have of Mr. Patel.
Who do you have next?
Mr. Kennedy, John Kennedy.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
John, can you raise your right hand and be sworn, please?
Stand wherever you want. That's fine. All right, Mr. Kennedy, will you please state your full name and business address for the record?
John H. Kennedy, 29 Mainland Road, Harleysville, PA 19438.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
Principal and owner of Kennedy Associates Planners and Land Use Consultants.
And you testified previously in the hearings in this matter, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
You were qualified as an expert in the area of land planning and zoning and testified as an expert at the previous hearings on those matters, is that right?
That is correct.
And at that hearing, you described to the board your extensive employment history and education, is that right?
That is correct.
And the board accepted you as an expert in the area of land planning and zoning, is that right?
Yes.
A true and correct copy of Mr. Kennedy's curriculum vitae has been marked as Exhibit A8. I would ask that the board confirm that Mr. Kennedy can continue to testify as an expert in the area of land planning and zoning.
The board has accepted him as an expert in this field previously, so unless there's an objection that we need to consider from Mr. Capuccio, I would advise that we do the same.
No, I know.
Okay, great.
At the meeting last week, our requested rezone as updated was considered by the Hatfield Township Planning Commission, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
And you were in attendance at that meeting of the Planning Commission, is that right?
Yes, I was.
What was the result of that meeting?
They voted unanimously to recommend adoption of the zoning text amendment and also to recommend adoption of the zoning map change.
I would like to review the changes to our plan since the date of the last hearings. First, with regard to the zoning district requested, we had previously requested the Walter property be rezoned from its current split zoning, LI limited industrial and RA1 residential, to entirely RA1. Is that right?
That is correct.
And we're now requesting that both the Walter property and the BAPS property be rezoned to RA2. Why was the change made?
The change was made as a recommendation from township staff. There was an observation in looking at the zoning map that there was much less RA2 land, especially vacant RA2 land, and that would have less overall impact on the township.
And therefore, in addition to the map amendment, we are now asking for a text amendment to the RA2 zoning district. Is that right?
That is correct.
And our text amendment to the RA2 zoning is attached as Exhibit A2. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Can you please briefly describe the nature of the changes to the RA2 residential zoning district that we propose?
Sure. They're very straightforward. Firstly, we added a provision for a religious use, which would be permitted, excuse me, by special exception when authorized by the Zoning Hearing Board. And then secondly, we also added a provision to permit a cluster development as a conditional use in accordance with the regulations that are provided. And then further in the RA2 section, we added design standards for the cluster development.
Okay. Is it fair to say that in other residential districts in Hatfield, the religious use is permitted by special exception?
Yes, it is. In fact, both of these elements were modeled after the RA1 district.
So essentially, the reason for the change from RA1 to RA2 is just because RA2 has less property in the township that is so zoned, and not because of any change in the text. Is that right?
That's correct.
And those changes will allow Envision to develop the Walter Farm with a residential cluster development as shown on our updated sketch plan labeled A3, and will allow the expansion of the BAPS temple approximately as detailed on A4. Is that right?
Yes.
What is the benefit to the township of the cluster development option?
Well, the benefit is that we can preserve more open space than would be done under a standard RA2 development. And the preservation of open space also does allow for some opportunities in terms of constructing trails and pedestrian connections.
As far as the preservation of open space, the ordinance amendment demands 20% of the total developable area of a parcel of land to be preserved as open space. And in our plan, I've represented that in reviewing it, that 8.39 acres of open space will be preserved, which is 26%. Is that correct?
That is correct. The only thing I would add is that the open space under Township ordinance does not include stormwater basins, and so the exact acreage could vary just slightly.
But it wouldn't get anywhere near less than 20%.
No, it would not.
And also with respect to the 2.3 acre parcel that Envision will be deeding to the temple, some of that will remain as open space as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it will be.
I have attached a plan that I've marked as Exhibit A6. Can you describe that document? You have the, Eric, do you have that document? Sorry, John, we sent you up there.
That's
We didn't
okay.
give you the packet.
Okay.
A6, please.
A6 is it's a marked up copy of the previous plan.
And that demonstrates the changes from the previous sketch plan that was presented to the board of what we now propose. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Exhibit A3 is the current sketch plan as updated, and Exhibit A5 is the previous sketch plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you briefly review Exhibit A3 and A6 with a focus on the changes from the previous plan?
Sure. Okay. This is the proposed plan, and what you see here is the land at this end, which is the 2.3 acres that will be deeded to BAPS, and that will then be combined with their existing holdings to create a larger area. It's actually will be a total of 5.71 acres. This is a conceptual layout. You can see the two additions that Mr. Patel described. I would also mention
Those are the 10,000 addition, which may grow to be 12, as much as 12, and the 3,000 addition as well.
that is correct. And I would also point out that we have done the research and tested this layout, and it will comply with the RA2 standards.
Show me where the proposed land on Cowpath for future widening is located.
That is in this area, and that would be widening that would be related to the eventual upgrade and construction of the so-called 309 connector road.
What about the addition of significant buffering from homes on Cowpath?
That is this area right here. Obviously, we have a buffer around the entire property. However, after meeting with neighbors, Envision Land Use has agreed to provide an enhanced buffer in this area and also save a significant number of trees. Because these homes are back and the proposed road is back pretty far from this property line, we should be able to save actually all of the existing trees that are in this area against the current neighbors on Cowpath Road.
About the traffic signal and widening within the right-of-way at Cowpath and Durstein?
That would be right here, and again, that would all be done within the right-of-way as it exists today, and there would be the construction of the light and then also the corresponding widening.
I'd like to review with you Exhibit A3. Specifically with, will you describe the frontage, the road configuration, access points, property orientation?
Sure. We have actually 3 different areas of frontage, the majority of which is on Cowpath Road, just to the east of Township Line Road. We then also have a small area a little bit further east on Cowpath, and then we have an area on Township Line Road. We plan to use 2 of these 3 access points. The Cowpath Road access point would be the main access point, and then there would also be an additional access point on Township Line Road. You can also see dotted in here, this would provide frontage also to BAPS. So the goal would be to try to minimize any new driveways that would be constructed along Township Line Road. We would have an internal loop system with some further internal streets, some what we call eyebrows in the planning industry. These are really just kind of large horseshoe-shaped roads with some open space in the middle, although I would point out that it has not been counted towards the minimum required open space. However, it will be open. You can see this is the large buffer area, which is located, will be planted and located at the backs of the homes on Cowpath Road. We then also have a buffer on the east side against the mobile home community, and we have a stormwater basin, and there will be buffering on the north side against the old trolley line.
Your understanding of what is proposed consistent with what I've said earlier tonight in the opening with Mr. Rosenthal's testimony and Mr. Patel's testimony from earlier this evening?
Yes, it is.
An Envision and BAPS Temple proposal as shown in the sketch plan would require that the property be rezoned from its LI Limited Industrial and RA1 Residential to the RA2 Residential, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
As you've described it.
Yes.
And each would then be required to secure additional zoning relief. The residential development would require a conditional use, and the temple would require a special exception. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Otherwise, would the proposed development as shown on the sketch plan comply with all the applicable zoning ordinance requirement if rezoned to the RA2?
Yes, it does.
And that would be true as well if the 10,000 square foot BAPS building addition as shown on the plan was 12,000 square feet instead, as you've said.
Yes, that is correct.
Is the proposed use and development compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods and the church?
Yes, in my opinion it is. This is an area that has single-family homes around it. Also to the east we have the mobile home community, and on Township Line Road, even though this is Franconia Township, and this land is, some of the land is zoned industrial. Actually, a residential subdivision was just recently approved in Franconia Township by WB Homes.
Would the religious use with the adequate buffers be compatible with the residential use as well? We talked about it, the residential being compatible with it. Would the church use with the buffers be compatible with the residential?
I think that it would. We see examples of religious uses all throughout, not just Hatfield, but the entire North Penn area of religious uses coexisting in residential neighborhoods.
Have you reviewed this property to determine whether a rezone of this property from LI to RA2 would make sense from a land planning perspective?
In my opinion, it would make sense.
What?
It would make sense to rezone this residential.
There was significant testimony at the previous hearings regarding the suitability of this parcel for LI light industrial. Is it still your opinion that this property is not suited for its current zoning classification of LI?
That is correct. There's a significant amount of industrial land in Hatfield Township and also in the North Penn area, as I have testified to in the past. Also, there is a significant amount of better located industrial land, which is just right up Township Line Road in the vicinity of 309. So in essence, for this smaller, better located parcel to be utilized, one would have to drive past a lot of vacant industrial land to get to this point.
The Township Code requires that when a landowner requests a zoning amendment, certain impact statements must be submitted to the Township, including a fiscal impact statement, an environmental impact statement, and a transportation impact statement. We've submitted those statements as part of our application. Is that right?
Yes, we have.
And I would first direct your attention to the document that's been marked as A9. Can you please identify that document?
A9 is a fiscal impact study that is prepared by Lisa Thomas, a certified planner, with Thomas Panzak, Glack and Thomas Panzak, I'm sorry.
And just for the, to remind the board of the testimony at the last time, there is a net difference between the amount of school taxes that would be paid and the cost for educating school district children, eligible children, that is a negative number. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And it's somewhere in the $400,000+ range on an annual basis. Is that correct?
That's correct, just a little bit over $462,000.
And as was pointed out at the Planning Commission meeting last week and was pointed out in the hearings before this board, that is true with respect to virtually any residential land development. Is that correct?
That is true.
So the issue is that residential, generally speaking, operates at a loss with respect to those numbers, whereas commercial and industrial, sending no kids to school, acts as the plus and the counterbalance for the school district. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you next please identify Exhibit A10?
A10 is an environmental impact statement prepared by Holmes Cunningham Engineering.
And can you please identify Exhibits A11 and A12?
A11 is a traffic by traffic planning and design. And A12 is a trip generation traffic comparison memorandum, also prepared by traffic planning and design.
Mr. Kennedy, do you remember at the last hearings, just by way of reminder to the board, they may want to take a look at the record, we demonstrated that Hatfield Township had more than its fair share by proportion. It was way up there with respect to its percentage of property that was zoned industrially as compared to other communities in the North Bend District. Is that right?
That is correct.
And therefore had a lesser amount of residentially zoned property by percentage and a fewer number of school children, school-age eligible children. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Now, I asked you to identify A11 and A12, and those were the transportation impact study that was prepared by the traffic engineer. That's A11, and 12 is the trip generation letter that was previously submitted and reviewed by the board. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And those are virtually identical. The only difference here with respect to trip generation being the difference between 64 home proposal and a 65 home proposal. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Are you, as a land planner, familiar with the reports and the methodology in reviewing and applying them?
Yes.
Do you regularly review these type of documents in connection with your land planning practice?
Yes, we do.
And you've reviewed the various impact statements that we've submitted, is that correct?
I have.
And from a land planning perspective, do these impact statements essentially conform to that which was previously presented to the board with the previous plan and in the previous hearing?
Yes, they do.
Just minor differences based upon the difference in the number of homes and the traffic and school-age children in that regard.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Kennedy.
Capuccio.
Kennedy, good evening.
Good evening.
I just have very few questions for you. In terms of the landscaping along the homes on Cowpath Road, you indicated that that would be a significant landscape. Am I correct?
Yes, Envision Land Use has met with all the neighbors in that vicinity.
So the open space that you were talking about, that you were showing on the plan, and I can see on this plan that's before the board right now, it's shown in green. But in fact, over half of that is going to be buffer. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. That can be one of the functions of open space.
Not significant open space, however, for residents to be using from the development.
It could also be used. I think I mentioned that there could be trails throughout the community.
But you would agree that over half, if not three-quarters, will be significantly treed in or buffered.
I don't know what the percentage would be, but there's nothing wrong with utilizing buffering for open space. Open space does not necessarily only have to be soccer fields.
I understand. My point is that you would agree that significant buffer will be located, at least half, if not three-quarters, of what you show in green will be thickly buffered, preserving trees, shrubs, et cetera. And I would direct you to, give me one moment, please. Mr. Kennedy, the exhibit I would point you to is A3. It was a two-page document.
Yes.
And the second page, which was shown on the board. Can we put that
Correct.
up? Is that,
I think that would be one up.
maybe the previous one? Thank you.
Right
we
there.
go. So in fact, over half, if not three-quarters of this buffer will be heavily treed and closed in.
I'm not going to commit to a percentage. I think three-quarters is very heavy-handed. A significant amount of the open space will be used for buffering purposes. That is true.
With regard to the light that you discussed briefly at Durstein Road,
Yes.
That you would agree with me is an off-site improvement.
It is, we do not have any frontage at that point. That's correct, yes.
Correct. So that would be an off-site improvement, not technically required by the developer. Would you agree?
John, can you bring the mic closer to
sorry.
you? Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy, do you have any idea what the cost of that light would be?
I have no idea what the cost of a traffic light is.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
Yes. What is the average width of that buffer?
The average width, there is, actually, could we, sorry, Aaron, could we go back down to the green plan? You can see right here, there's a dotted line going around the entire property. That actually is 50 feet. So it's an undulating buffer that varies in size. And to give you an idea, for instance, here, this is roughly about 100 feet. This is probably closer to 200 feet. And in terms of how far back this places the homes, the distance between this home, the back of this home, and the building area, building envelope of that lot is 300 feet.
What's the required buffer for light industrial?
I do not have my code in front of me, so I'm not going to answer that.
Ramey, do you?
Don't have a definitive number.
I can tell you the required building setback in the light industrial district is 200 feet.
Okay. All right. And also, once again, you'll be asking for smaller lots than any other subdivision in Hatfield Township, correct?
No, that is not correct.
Well, where else have we approved a subdivision with smaller lots? Single-family homes?
Right here. Single-family detached homes in the MDH district vary from 3,600 square feet to 5,000 square feet for a single, and a double-wide modular is 6,875.
So you're comparing your homes to modular homes?
These are also single-family detached homes. Those are lots, and those are the standards within the Hatfield zoning ordinance. So these are not the smallest lots in Hatfield Township.
Anything else, Commissioner Hughes?
Yeah.
So of that green, what's that green space represents open space?
Yes, it does. Open space that we are using
I want to be clear.
towards the minimum required open space. And the only reason why I'm
Sounds really
making that
confusing.
distinction is that I also mentioned, for instance, we have some areas in here which actually would be open space, but I'm not counting that towards the minimum required open space.
Definition of an open space is deeded to the township?
Actually, it can be offered to the township, but it could also be taken care of by a homeowner association. It's really whatever the township would prefer.
That deeded portion or that portion that the community would take care of, is that what's in green, or does that represent the definition of open space, which is something that's not developed?
This would be deed restricted and could not be developed in any way. That would be outlined in the developers agreement and the HOA, the homeowner association documents. That would typically be a land development issue.
So that's only 8 acres?
It's what you see in green is 8.39 acres. So what that excludes is the basins. We're not counting that. Obviously, that is open land visually. You can't use it for playing in, but it is open visually. And then these other little small areas here. And again, the maintenance issue, that would come down to land development, but most typically what we find would be an HOA.
So you're not suggesting that little bulb there is open space, right? Only what's in green?
Correct.
Okay. The other question I have is, of these homes going in, how many are between 10,000 and 11,000 square feet?
Well, the way the ordinance is
Lot
constructed, the minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet, and then there was a clause added so that there's an average requirement of 11,000.
Of those 65 homes depicted on there, how many are between 10 and 11? How many between 11 and 12?
Well, right now, the average is 11,200 and a little bit above that.
I understand the average.
Well, what that means, though, is pretty much almost none of them are at 10,000 square feet.
So how many
They're
between
pretty
10 and
much
11?
all at about 11 to 11.4, 11.5.
Nothing less than 11.
There might be one that's 10,700, but just by virtue of of what the average is, there are very few.
Knowledge, you're suggesting only one home is less than 11, and the other 64 are more than 11.
I believe that is the case.
Let us get you that. We did not calculate that. I did not prepare the witness for that, didn't anticipate that question. If you want that information, we will certainly submit it and have that submitted. If you hold a hearing record open, we'll submit that.
I can tell you all of these regular lots in here are 11,000.
Okay, I want to know what the distribution is between 10 and 11, 11 and 12, 12 and 13.
We'll give you a list of the lot numbers and the square footage for each one of them. You can take a look at it,
Yeah,
determine what you want.
Thank you.
We can easily do that.
Anyone else?
I have a quick question or two about the traffic studies, exhibits 11 and 12. Can you explain to us the difference between the two? I know it sounds like because there's only one additional home that the numbers are relatively close, but I'm having a tough time matching up just because this is the
Mr.
first one
Ziffel,
I've seen.
I have our traffic engineer here. If you can hold that question for him, I'll make sure he
Next,
answers
right?
that.
Yeah, that's fine. I thought he was the appropriate one.
Thank you.
My only other question is, did you say earlier that the dotted line through the open space green area, that the distance from that to the property line is 50 feet?
That is correct, yes.
I don't have anything else.
Any other commissioners with questions?
I have a question regarding the impact on the school district. Mr. Bartle's argument that Hatfield has the smallest percent of students in the district, I feel has really no bearing on this development going in if it does get approved. I think at one point we had someone from the school board say that this was going to have a 1 million plus impact on the school board. Your study says that projected number of school-age children is 66. That's one child per house. You've got 65 homes going in. I find that difficult to believe. Typically, someone buying a 3 to 4 bedroom home is probably going to have 2 children. That's going to double that number.
Well, we provided that information. That information comes directly from the appropriate research materials on that. If you take into consideration that we're talking about school-age eligible children, and in order to pay for them, they're the ones that have to attend public school, while it may be the case that there are more than 65 school-age eligible children there, the ones that attend public school, that's an approximate number, and it's pretty darn accurate. We use those experts to give us that information, and every one of the communities it generally checks out.
Okay, anyone else? I have a couple of questions for
Sure.
clarification. You spoke about the proposed light at Durstein and Cowpath and the related widening that goes with that.
Yes.
And then you spoke about some widening down on the other end towards Township Line. Could you describe that again, please?
Yes, that would be in this area of Cowpath Road, and that is setting aside some additional land as right-of-way for future use. That would be in connection with this 309 connector project, whereas the other improvement that I was referring to at Durstein Road, that is working within the existing right-of-way, and that would be a more immediate improvement.
That's an improvement that you're proposing. Up along the other end, you're offering to dedicate the right-of-way, but not do any improvements.
Correct.
Is
That
that
would
right?
simply be set aside in the future for PennDOT when they come through and construct the 309 connector road.
That dedicated right-of-way showed in green right now?
No. It's our understanding it's actually a very small amount of land is needed.
Well, actually, I'm not sure that Mr. Hughes would be able to see it from over there because it's small, but I can see it here. And if you'll just show that between where the cartway is
little line
and
here.
where the black line starts that outlines the open space, there's a rim of property that goes all the way through there. That's the property you're talking about.
Correct. And it's not, our traffic engineers have had conversations with PennDOT, and they know the scope of the improvements. So it's not really a large amount of land that's needed.
John, was there conversation at one point about a mill and overlay of Cowpath from Township to Durstein?
That I can't really speak to. Either Mr. Rosenthal or our traffic engineer would probably be more appropriate for that.
Frank, do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but that doesn't mean anything. I may have forgotten. I'm not going to represent to you that we didn't discuss that. I don't believe I was part of that conversation. Mr. Rosenthal, do you remember anything like that?
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure with relative to my
Different
notes.
projects, different nights. Sometimes we get confused. That's
Okay,
no problem.
great. Thank you. Who would be your next witness?
My next witness is Michael Borski, Jr. Will you please come forward and be sworn?
You can stand right here and be sworn if you don't mind.
Thank you. Mr. Borski, will you please state your full name and business address for the record?
My name is Mike Borski Jr. My business address is 1621 Wood Street, Philadelphia, PA 19103.
And who is your employer and what role do you play there?
I work for the Flynn Company, and I'm an industrial and office leasing and sales broker.
What is your educational background, sir?
I graduated from Penn State in 2004 with a degree in advertising and a minor in business.
And how long have you been in the real estate business?
I started with the Flynn Company in April of 2005.
So approximately 13 years?
Yeah, a little over 13 years.
What licenses or certifications do you hold?
I hold a standard Pennsylvania real estate license.
A salesperson's license?
A salesperson license, yes.
During your career, how many property transactions have you been involved in as a salesperson?
It's hard to pinpoint the number, but I would say that it's well over 100 transactions.
Can you please identify the document that I've marked in our packet as Exhibit A13? Is that your CV?
I would need to see it.
We'll give you one.
Yes, it is.
And you provided that to us, is that correct?
That is correct.
And it's true and correct and accurate to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Borski, have you previously been qualified as an expert witness in the area of real estate sales in court boards of view or before local boards such as zoning hearing boards, boards of supervisors or commissioners, and planning commissions?
Yes, I have.
And approximately how many times?
About 3.
When was the most recent time that you were so qualified?
About a year ago, I was sworn in as a expert testimony in Upper Moreland Township.
I'd move for the acceptance of Mr. Borski as an expert witness in the area of real estate sales.
Any objection, Mr. Capuccio? Yes. Oh, yeah, you have to go to the mic. Thanks.
Go ahead, no problem.
Mr. Borski, tonight, you indicated that you were qualified as an expert only 3 times. Since 2005, you've been working as an agent?
Yes, sir.
And in looking at your CV, you have listings, it looks about 10 listings shown there. Are those all of your listings?
No, not at all. It's an example of a handful of them.
Example of a handful of them. In terms of the property which is the subject tonight, you've never attempted to either lease or list this property, have you?
I have looked at it with another party who was interested in buying it years ago, but I've never listed it, no.
All right. So, all right. I would submit that with the limited knowledge of the witness, I don't believe he qualifies as an expert for this type of testimony.
I think what we'll do is, if you want to.
Okay, thank you. The test in Pennsylvania as to whether someone is qualified to give expert testimony is whether he has a knowledge level that is in excess of the common person in the community. There is no question that this gentleman has a real estate sales license. That's what he's being asked to be qualified as an expert in, and he has 13 years in the business. That is far in excess of anything that the average person in the community has.
Mark, as you know, this is a legislative hearing. This is not an adjudication where the board is sitting in a quasi-judicial position. Therefore, any testimony that's relevant can be heard by the board and given the weight that the board deems appropriate. So, given his 13 years, the fact that he's a licensed real estate broker, I think the board can accept him as an expert in that field, and they'll understand his background via the questions you've just asked and give the testimony the weight they think it deserves.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Borski, have you had the opportunity to analyze 3515 Cowpath Road and the surrounding area in preparation of the hearing this evening?
Yes, I have.
And from your review of the property, do you believe that the property can be effectively marketed for industrial use?
I do not believe that that is the best use for the property, no.
And why is it, do you believe that it can be effectively marketed for industrial use?
Why is it that I do believe it?
No, I'm saying, do you believe that it can be effectively marketed for industrial use?
No, I do not believe that it can be. I believe that there are many far superior existing and proposed sites within very close proximity to there, and this site does not offer enough to drive someone to want to use this property for that purpose.
Let's talk about some of the issues that have been mentioned with respect to this property. First of all, can you discuss the effect of adjacency to residences?
Sure. A lot of industrial uses have heavy tractor-trailer traffic. A lot of the modern facilities are logistic facilities, such as a FedEx distribution, a UPS distribution, and a lot of their business is getting tractor-trailers on the road all day long, every day, Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, nights, weekends, multiple different shifts. And in this surrounding neighborhood with as much residents as it is, I believe that that would be a challenge for a lot of the neighborhood there. And more importantly, the cost to build new industrial space is very expensive, and this is not well located enough in close proximity to major roadways to drive someone to want to be there.
What about adjacency to the place of worship? How is that relevant to the issue as to whether the property can be effectively marketed for industrial use?
Well, again, I think the point about the industrial uses operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if a place of worship is holding a service, tractor trailers could be coming in and out, there could be noises, there could be smells, and again, a lot of the modern distribution facilities have that 24-hour, 7-day a week type of access, and it's a loud and active type of environment.
What about the issue of street visibility with respect to this site?
Well, regarding the street visibility here, is not good street visibility. There's a lot of other properties that are on 309, for example, or within a mile or two of the Lansdale interchange that are available, that are much more visible and much more accessible. This is more of an interior site that does not offer those advantages.
What about the sufficiency of access for an industrial use, or the potential access being proximate to the residences? How does that affect the usability of this site and the saleability of this site for industrial?
Well, again, the neighborhood would be experiencing a lot of tractor-trailer traffic, noises, smells. It doesn't really seem like a fit for the neighborhood. Typically, when you see an industrial building, it's surrounded by a lot of other industrial buildings in a park where they don't mind if there's the noise and the smells and the traffic. And in a residential neighborhood, which I believe this is primarily located around, I think they would be adversely affected by that.
Let's talk about this property with respect to whether it could be effectively marketed for the residential development that's been proposed this evening. Do you have an opinion with respect to that?
I think it's a very good use for the site. I think it fits with the neighborhood. I think there's a demand for that type of product, and I think it would do very well there.
And so would it be able to be effectively marketed for that use as opposed to the industrial?
I believe so.
Let's talk about it from a standpoint, again, of access. How does the access fit into the residential scheme?
Well, again, I think the access is not ideal. I think that industrial buildings want to be near all the major highways, and they're not here. So for them to get to that, they're passing residents, and they're making noise and traffic and activity and things that would not be, in my opinion, a good fit with the neighborhood.
How about access for the residential cars? How would that, if the residential community that was described was built, how would traffic access be affected there?
Well, instead of having regular car traffic come in and out from residential development, you have tractor trailers, which are up to 80 feet long, coming in and out of the property. And a lot of the newer development for industrial is just basically logistics, where products are trying to get in and out as quickly as possible all day long, which means they're loaded up onto a tractor trailer and zipped out of there as much as possible. So from a traffic flow standpoint, you would see a lot of tractor trailers constantly in and out on that property, big vehicles that could present some slowing up of the traffic for the residents.
Let's talk about the market at this time. Can you discuss the demand for single-family detached units in the marketplace in this area?
Sure. There's a high demand for that product still. Interest rates remain low. The economy's healthy, the desire for people to own. So there are many people that are renting. There are people that want to move to the area, and they prefer to own as opposed to leasing. So I think there's a high demand for that product.
What about the price range of the homes as described by Mr. Rosenthal as being in the 500,000 and up range?
I think for the product that's being proposed here, I think that's an appropriate pricing.
And would they sell as a result of that?
I do believe they would.
What is the current availability of industrially zoned land in the local area near the Walter tract? Do you have that information?
Yes, I do. To name a couple notable pieces of land relating to industrial development in Wallenbold and Allentown Road in Towmenton Township, there's a proposed 615,000 square foot new industrial development there. It'll be 3 different buildings. On Route 309, Knappen and Associates just purchased 66 acres of ground, which will be developed somewhere around 500,000 square feet, ballpark of industrial ground. Another site in Lower Salford is proposed for 175,000 square foot building. That's just a couple of the sites that are around there that are being proposed to be built and pretty far along in that process.
You also, do you know anything about a development for 260,000 square feet at 1,000 Cannon Avenue?
There's not a development there, but on 1,000 Cannon Avenue, you're referencing an existing product, which answer the question about land, but as far as existing industrial buildings that are not being developed but currently exist, there's buildings like 1,000 Cannon Avenue, which is the old Dow Tile facility, has about 260,000 square feet available there in Lansdale. 2750 Morris Road in Lansdale has 415,000 square feet available there. The old Otis Elevator Building, 2801 Township Line Road, has 108,000 square feet available. There's 85,000 feet at 1350 Welsh Road, 72,000 feet at 1180 Church Road. So if you just look at that existing product, just naming those handful of buildings there, it's close to 950,000 square feet of existing industrial product within about a 10-minute drive from the subject property.
Based on the availability of industrial land that you've described in the area, are you of the opinion as a broker or as a salesman that a developer should consider adding additional industrial development to the market?
Not at this location.
How much total industrial space is there available in the immediate market? I'm going to ask you to describe what the immediate market is.
If you describe the immediate market as Hatfield, Lansdale, Montgomeryville, Colmar, North Wales, that general vicinity, you have about 1.5 million square feet of planned industrial space that's available. You have numerous acreage available that's not proposed as anything but available for development. And you have over about 2 million square feet of existing product that's available for lease.
In contrast, what's your opinion as the marketability of the proposed residential development?
I think it's very marketable, and I think that it would move quickly.
Thank you. That's all I have of this witness.
Thank you. Mark?
Mr. Borski, you were just testifying and you indicated that a lot of the industrial uses you indicated would involve tractor trailers. Can you tell me what other uses besides, you are aware this property is zoned limited industrial, it's a light industrial zone, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What other uses are available in that district that are not truck users?
Office use, I believe is available in the light industrial zoning district. There's flex and lab uses, which aren't as heavy tractor trailer traffic, but they're also available in that zoning district.
What else?
Office, flex, lab, industrial, manufacturing.
Printing, publishing. How about private schools? They don't generate warehouse-type traffic that you were talking to about the board. In fact, when you look at the zoning code, you're directing this board and focusing their attention to perhaps a warehouse use. But there are a list of uses in the code that would not involve heavy truck use. Isn't that true?
I believe that's correct, but however, I believe that if you market the site for industrial, the cost of construction regarding all the uses that you're talking about, the only one that seems to be currently active in the market is for that type of product, but your answer is correct that there are other uses that would not use loading.
With regard to the statement that you made that this isn't well located, and specifically, you indicated a major roadway. Can you tell me what Township Line Road is going to be when they finish the construction within approximately 2 to 3 years?
You said I mentioned a major roadway, talk about 309, is that what you're referring to?
Do you know what Township Line Road is being?
Yes, proposed as a 309 Turnpike connector, yes.
Turnpike connector, and that connection from this property will go where? Down towards Montgomeryville and connect directly in, isn't that true?
My understanding, I was going to connect to Lansdale interchange.
To the interchange too, you're correct. So when you say that it's not well located, this property literally touches the 309 connector, isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay. You said that there's an issue because the site is an interior site. You're familiar that there are light industrial uses, office uses that oftentimes have no frontage, isn't that true, but for an access point?
Yes, it is.
Sure, and what they do in those situations is they would have a sign out front, and people understand where it is using GPS, seeing the sign, et cetera. Isn't that true?
Well, I believe it's a bit leading. The point was more towards the accessibility and less of the signage, I believe.
Well, let's talk about accessibility a minute. The property touches the 309 connector, doesn't it?
Correct, but if you look at it from a logistics standpoint, you want to get to places in a certain period of time, so even though you're saying you're right here, where people want to be is even closer than what you're saying. So is it touching this, and can you get from here to somewhere else? Yes, but where the people want to be, where the logistics customers want to be is exactly here, not on the way to there.
I apologize. I'm not sure if I understood what you're saying. Let me rephrase my question. The fact is, the property, when the 309 connector is completed, this property touches it and will have access either coming out onto Cowpath Road and going down to the corner, or exiting right onto the 309 connector to the turnpike or further down into Montgomeryville. Isn't that true?
Yes.
You said that this isn't suitable for industrial development, and yet, in looking at your CV, isn't one of your most recent transactions the sale of 66 acres industrial zoned ground on Route 309, Bethlehem Pike in Hatfield?
Yes, it is.
Sure. So you just sold a 66-acre property. You're familiar that a property that was on Route 309, which this property will be on the 309 connector, and yet you're arguing that it's not suitable. The fact is, this property is suitable for limited industrial development. Isn't that correct?
I believe that in my business you have to play games of percentage, likelihood, and odds. And I think that, is there a chance that it could be used as industrial? Sure, there's a chance. I believe, though, that there are several superior sites that are available, either existing or planned, that would be used prior to this, and it would take a long time to move this property as an industrial property.
Mr. Borski, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one other question, Mr. Borski. The question that you were asked by Mr. Capuccio the first time when you gave the answer, I'm going to focus on that. How does the length of the roadway upon which access is taken from the ultimate destination points affect the usability and the saleability of the location as an industrial site?
It greatly affects it when you look at just society as a whole right now. You look at where people go to buy things and how quickly they want to buy it. They go to the internet and they want it at their house, sometimes even that day or the next day. So from an industrial distribution standpoint, even if you're 5 or 10 minutes away, that's 5 or 10 minutes over many deliveries over one day. That makes a significant impact. So despite the fact that you may be 5 or 10 or 15 minutes away from where you're getting to be, ultimately to that distribution point, it's adding that much time and compound that it makes a big difference to those people in that industry.
The distance then from the access point to the ultimate destination of where the product gets delivered has a substantial effect, in your opinion. Is that right?
Absolutely.
How does this property, with respect to that, the proposed destinations from this access point, if there is such a thing, in the future for this property, how does that differ from the sites that you're testifying to that are better located?
Well, some of the sites I mentioned were right next to the Lansdale interchange, and you can be on the interchange in less than 5 minutes. And from the Lansdale interchange, you can be north or south, east or west in a relatively quick period of time. So again, if you're here, I'm not sure what the exact time might be to drive from there to here, but maybe it's another 15 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes, I'm not sure exactly what it'll be. But, you know, that critical point, you want to be able, like last mile is the idea, you want to be able to get to, within 30 minutes, a certain demographic and number of households. And by being far enough away, even if it is 10 or 15 minutes, that makes a significant difference and would not suit the majority of people looking for that type of product.
Was that the nature of your answer to Mr. Capuccio's question?
I intended it to be.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on logistics, but the property doesn't have to be necessarily used for logistics. And you just used the example of someone going out and going to the turnpike, okay? Are you familiar with Turn 14 in Hatfield?
Yes, I am.
But they're a logistic company, okay? They're further from the turnpike than this property, and they're there and they're surviving. So, you know.
Anyone else? Okay. Do you have any other witnesses, Frank?
Yes, I'd like to call Mr. Richardson. I actually hadn't intended to do that, but I did promise Mr. Zipfel he'd get the answer to his question. So he is one of the witnesses that is here. If there are any questions on the traffic report and the information that we presented in the other hearings and tonight. So I'd like to have Mr. Richardson sworn and answer Mr. Zipfel's question and any other questions about traffic that you might have.
And he's had 25 minutes to think of the answer to the question.
It better be good.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
I do.
We've qualified Mr. Richardson as an expert in the field of traffic planning many times, I believe, so we could skip that if you don't mind.
I don't mind if Mr. Capuccio accepts Mr. Richardson as an expert in traffic engineering. That's what I'd like him to do, and if he does that, then I won't ask any questions in that regard.
And again, I am familiar with Mr. Richardson's testimony, et cetera, and no objection.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. He is so accepted then?
Yes.
Very good. Mr. Zipfel?
I don't really recall what I asked.
All right. Well,
I think it was I'm joking. I asked the question between exhibits 12 and 13.
Yes, essentially.
There's a one-house differential.
One house differential.
What's the trip differential between the prior report and the current report?
It's the rule of thumb for residential single-family homes is during the AM peak hour, which is a 1 hour time period, there's one trip per home during the peak hour. That's what a normal house generates during the peak hour. Doesn't mean that every house is not going to have two, but on average it's one trip in the PM peak hour as well as the morning peak hour. On a daily basis, it's 10 trips. Okay, and a trip is considered to be one trip going in or one trip coming out, right? So essentially the difference is between 64 and 65 is one trip in the morning, one trip in the evening, and 10 overall during the day.
And so because these reports are presented to us now, we don't have the luxury of reviewing them. The more updated report, or I should say the newest report, is a little bit more voluminous. Are there any other changes of significance that we should know about, trip-wise or otherwise?
I believe the temple is also included because of the additional, I'll call it square footage that is being added, but I don't think that there's any difference as a result of that. But I think that's mentioned in the report.
Okay. But other than that, the reports are based on the same information other than the one house and then BAPS?
Yeah, we just wanted them updated because our plan is different. We wanted it to match identically, both with respect to our traffic impact, with respect to our fiscal impact and also with respect to our traffic impact.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, other commissioners, questions about traffic?
Real quick, so you said that the BAPS does not have any impact on rush hour traffic? What I heard?
Well, I'll let Mr. Richardson take a look at his report.
The question was, what is the difference between 64 homes and 65 homes? And that's the one trip in the morning, one trip in the evening, and 10 trips.
What's the difference in square footage for the Baptist church?
Well, the church,
Is that only on worship on Sunday, or is it Monday through Friday?
we looked at the highest peak hour. Well, we looked at it up for 4 time periods: a weekday AM peak hour, which is a weekday, a PM peak hour, and a Sunday peak hour. The expansion, according to our study, and this was based on existing counts that we did at the BAPS facility, would be 64 new trips during the morning. I'm sorry, 64. I don't know how to explain it any other way. Who invited Siri to the room? Okay. Okay.
I didn't think you were ready for cross-examination yet.
On a daily basis, let's go back to that. On a daily basis, or weekday, it would be 64 additional trips based on the increase in square footage. During the morning peak hour, it would be 8 new trips. The PM peak hour, 5 new trips. On a Sunday, which during the time period would be 10 new trips.
It's total for the week, not for a day. You said 60?
For a day, yes. And the reason why we looked at that was because, as Mr. Patel had testified to, is that they don't anticipate the congregation growing by a significant amount. They just need more space for their existing congregation and be able to stretch out a little bit. I think what we have seen is we looked at it from a worst case standpoint by saying, even ignoring what he stated about that, we still wanted to account for some additional traffic that might be generated based on actual square footage, which is the norm for our industry. If we see an increase in square footage, we want to look at it from a worst case standpoint.
Anything else?
Your traffic study is basically just to tell us how many cars are going to be generated, how many trips are going to be generated from this development, correct?
No, the traffic study is a little bit more than that. Sometimes that can be the scope. The scope of this study was we took a look at existing traffic volumes at 3 intersections in the area.
Which 3 are they?
Durstein, Cowpath and Township line, and Penn Street in Township line.
Okay.
All right, we looked at those during the AM, PM, and peak hours, as well as the Sunday PM peak hours. Again, basically, we wouldn't look at the normal, if this was a residential development only, we wouldn't have looked at Sunday because it typically, your highest volumes are during a morning weekday, during the commuter peak hours. So what we did was we looked at existing traffic counts. We assessed the existing conditions at these intersections. We added the traffic based on growth in the area, regardless of this site being built, very small percentage of growth over the 5 years that we typically will add on top. We have a growth of horizon year of 2023 when we would suspect that the full build out would occur. And then what we do is we add the traffic that is anticipated for the proposed development, in this case being the homes as well as the BAPS facility. And then what we do is we conduct computer analyses comparing to what we call pre-construction levels of service versus post-construction. And then based on that, we are able to make an assessment that whether a site will have a negative impact or adverse impact on the neighboring roadways.
On those 3 intersections?
On those 3 intersections, yes.
Are you familiar with Main and Vine in the borough?
Not like the back of my hand, but I am familiar.
Have you ever been there at rush hour, peak hours?
I probably have, but I can't recall when the last time was.
Have you seen it backed up from Vine Street to Lincoln Avenue with residential traffic? I mean, if you drive on Cowpath nowadays, the traffic is horrendous. It's getting close to gridlock.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
If you keep this as light industrial and you build a connector road, first of all, you're going to have people going in a different direction to go to work, and you're going to have trucks and stuff probably using the connector road more than anything. So by putting houses there, you're just adding to the problem that's already here.
Well, you put any land development on the property, you're going to be adding traffic. So it's just a measure of comparison between the uses.
But there'll be other options for light industrial.
Can he finish his answer, please? Go ahead.
The projections, if you look at what Mr. Kennedy, some of the layouts that I've seen with Mr. Kennedy, which included some industrial uses and some other land uses, you could see at least maybe 3 times the traffic associated with what we have proposed before you tonight. With an industrial use, you could have a 200,000 square feet of space that I've seen. That could be a distribution center with lots of trucks going in and out. So anytime you develop a piece of property, you're going to have increased traffic. It's just a matter of how you compare them. And what we have seen, and basically some of the layouts that we have seen as far as the uses, is that you could potentially have 3 times the amount of traffic generated by the industrial use and other uses that are permitted on that property.
Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
There's a lot of uses that wouldn't generate that type of traffic.
I can tell you, Mr. Capuccio mentioned a private school. A private school will generate more than the 65 homes will. Because most parents are going to drop their kids off at a private school. They don't usually use a lot of buses. You can have other uses that go along with that. You could have a daycare center, I believe, and that can generate more trips than you have for a residential use. So again, what you're saying is correct. There could be uses that would generate less, but there's also some that could generate substantially more. So I can't disagree with your statement there.
Anything else, commissioners? Mr. Capuccio, do you have any questions? Okay, great. All right. Is that it, Frank?
That's all I have. Thank you.
I think that's 6, right? 6 witnesses?
I don't know.
None other, right? You're done. That's what I'm
Yes.
asking. Okay, great.
I am. Thank you.
Okay, very good. It's getting, you know, I'm watching the clock. We have a conditional use hearing to have as well, and lots of people in the room. So, Mr. Capuccio, it would be your turn now to present whatever you'd like to the board. That be
Thank you
okay?
very much.
Yes. And
Yeah.
we were going
I-
to suggest that, actually. I was going to ask, how long do you think your presentation would be?
I'm with you, Mark. How's
You
that?
can put on the record the entire dais needed to go to the restroom, so we're all in the same scenario. So let's do that. Let's take no more than a 10-minute comfort break. If we all get back, or at least the people on the dais, then we can get started quicker.
President, you ready?
Ready?
Okay, the hearing is back in session. Mr. Capuccio? Oh, that's,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Everyone, good evening. Mark Capuccio, on behalf of Forced Family Partnership, the owner of the adjoining parcel to the subject. This evening I have Mr. Solomon, who's a land planner, who will be testifying. I did discuss with my colleague, Mr. Bartle, about simply stipulating to his qualifications as an expert land planner, and he has agreed to do so.
That's great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Welcome. So the exhibit first that you'll see in the booklets that were up along the ledge, for anyone who has not seen that yet, Exhibit 1 is Mr. Solomon's CV, and Exhibit 2, which I'll move into, is going to be his report. Mr. Solomon, good evening.
Good evening.
Did you prepare a report relating to... Oh, I'm sorry.
Michael.
Mike, did you prepare a report relating to this property this evening?
I did.
And board members, again, the report at F2. What did you review in preparing your report?
I reviewed the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, specifically the Section 105 regarding consistency with the proposed project. I reviewed the Hatfield Township zoning ordinance, the Hatfield Township subdivision and land development ordinance, the Indian Valley Regional Comprehensive Plan, the Indian Valley Industrial Marketing Plan, as well as the proposed project and supporting documentation.
And Mike, you've been present through the testimony this evening. You understand that the proposed rezoning would be for RA2 with a cluster. It would allow approximately 65 single-family homes as proposed on the sketch plan. Generally, do you think that the proposed rezoning is consistent with sound planning objectives?
No, I do not.
Tell me what you reviewed, starting with Section 105 of the MPC.
Starting with Section 105, I reviewed primarily the Hatfield zoning ordinance, the subdivision land development ordinance,
Very well.
and all the supporting documentation.
Hatfield Township, I'm correct, has adopted the Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan as its plan, correct?
Correct.
All right. Does the comp plan reference the 309 connector? That's been discussed tonight, this evening.
Yes, it does.
And is that in the vicinity of the parcel?
In immediate vicinity of the subject property. In fact, the parcel abuts the 309 connector.
And board members, I'm going to turn your attention under tab 3, the Route 309 connector. A portion of the project is shown under tab 3. And Aaron, we do have that. There it is. Thank you. It's one of the exhibits. Briefly, if you would identify and then discuss this exhibit.
It's the Route 309 connector. As you can see, the subject property is located with frontage on Cowpath Road and the proposed 309 connector.
And The 309 connector project is, am I correct, it's an ongoing project?
Correct.
All right. Generally, what impact does a connector like that have on a property like this?
Makes it desirable for non-residential development.
Right. What does the Monco Comprehensive 2040 plan state regarding the concentrating land uses and the impact of future transportation improvements?
It intends to improve transportation quality and expand options for community residents, workers, and businesses.
So then generally, that section that you just referenced of the comp plan, the county comp plan, which is the township plan, what impact does it have relating to this parcel?
Once again, it makes it desirable for non-residential development.
If this property remains as LI, and if it would be developed, for example, one of the permitted uses, and I had gone through some with one of the witnesses this evening, where would the connector roads likely enter and exit this property?
Cowpath Road and Township Line Road, the 309 connector.
So if the subject were to be developed as an LI use, it would have access directly onto the 309 connector?
Correct.
Do you believe that to be relevant?
Very relevant.
Why?
Because once again, it shows the desirability having access to a major transportation network on the 309 connector.
Okay. Board members, I'd like to turn your attention to tab 4 in the exhibits. Mike, tab 4 is the schedule for completion of the 309 connector. Have you reviewed that?
Yes, I have.
And what does that exhibit tell us? If you take a minute to turn to tab 4.
The project is in design, is a committed project, and construction will begin soon.
Does the 2040 comp plan, county's comp plan, support public transportation options?
Yes, it does.
And what are the benefits of having public access to the subject property?
Public access, once again, supports non-residential development. You have the ability to get workers and employees to the site on a major transportation network.
Okay. And I think you keep going back to the issue of a major transportation road, something that would have access. It's interesting because tonight several times I heard there are no major connectors. Do you agree with that testimony you heard this evening?
No.
Board members, I'd like to turn your attention, please, to Exhibit F5 in the exhibit booklet. Mike, F5, you've prepared this exhibit. What does that show?
Shows a portion of the Hatfield Township zoning map, primarily the LI district, and really what it shows is that solid block of the LI district, which is, the subject property is in the immediate area of.
The bottom left. One of the interesting points that was made tonight, one of the witnesses talked briefly about the mobile home park, which is shown to the foot of this plan, right above the word township. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That property, there was an indication about lot sizes. Do you know when that property was actually, I'll say, constructed, installed? Technically, they're mobile units, but how long has that been there?
And prior to zoning, 1943.
Right. Considering the proposed rezoning, when you look at this map, if the subject property were changed to RA2, do you consider that to be one zone, for example, creeping into another?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because you begin the process of eroding away your light industrial district with a residential property, and then where does it stop? Do you continue to rezone and then just completely erode away that non-residential core of the township?
If I look to the northeast of the subject property, am I correct, that's all zoned LI in the township?
Correct.
If we're to look across the border of Township Line Road into Franconia, how is that property zoned?
Industrial.
And is it a large block of industrial zoned land?
It is a large block.
All right. I'd like to take a moment to look at some of the uses. We keep hearing at Planning Commission meetings, you heard it again this evening, that there will be a lot of trucks, heavy trucks, et cetera. You would agree this is a light industrial zone?
Correct.
In terms of the LI district, are there other uses that would be permitted that wouldn't require, for example, heavy trucks?
Absolutely.
Am I correct, business office is permitted?
Correct.
Research labs?
Correct.
An auction house?
Correct.
An educational use?
Yes.
Now, there was an issue raised by Mr. Richardson. He said that he thought it would generate more traffic. Am I correct that the educational use section under the LI zone requires all students to be bused to the property?
That's correct.
And it cannot exceed 100 students?
Correct.
Thank you. At the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant implied that there would be trucks going in and out of the site all day. Do office uses, pharmaceutical uses, et cetera, maybe we'll even say the school uses, an auction house, would they require heavy trucks all day?
No.
The Montgomery County 2040 comp plan, I'm going to jump back to that a second. Does that indicate that industrial development remains strong in Montgomery County?
Yes, it does.
And what does the plan indicate about allowing industrial land to remain industrial?
It says industrial land should remain industrial land.
That is in the plan that's been adopted by Hatfield Township.
That's correct.
You indicated that offices and labs, I'll say pharmaceuticals, are permitted in the LI zone in the township. Are there office and pharmaceutical uses nearby?
There are.
So are you familiar with Teva, for example, in Montgomery Township?
Yes.
Is there another called Alliance in Harleysville?
Correct.
Merck in Upper Gwinnett?
Yes.
So they do exist and they're nearby?
Correct.
And they would be eligible to go on a site of this nature?
Correct.
All right. Does the fact that this parcel remains vacant and with direct access, as you had mentioned, to the 309 connector, does that bode well for business for this parcel in the future?
Yes.
I want to talk briefly about the economic development portion. In your report, you had tied together that issue of economic development with transportation. How is economic development tied to transportation?
Economic development is tied with transportation in that businesses want to locate where the best transportation networks exist. In this case, you have a proposed improvement. You have the 309 connector. That's an ideal location for non-residential development.
And is the issue of economic development and transportation combined referenced in the Monco 2040 comp plan?
Yes.
Is that important, and if so, why?
Very important. Once again, it supports the desirability of the property for non-residential development. Accessibility to the 309 connector. You have public transportation options. It serves as a vital function to develop this property non-residentially.
And yet you heard the witness that testified previously say that this isn't on a major connector and it doesn't have major accessibility. You agree or disagree with that?
Completely disagree. It has frontage on the 309 connector.
Is this property located near proposed local train service?
Correct. In the Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan, there is a proposed train rail extension near the vicinity of the property.
In terms of the property being conducive to limited or light industrial development, do you believe that it is conducive under current zoning?
Yes.
Do you think that the property is conducive to office development under the current zoning?
Yes.
Tell me about the Monco Plan 2040, the comp plan. What does it state about location of businesses and employment-oriented land uses, such as office?
Accessibility. You have appropriate sites to locate to, whether you have train service, highway interchanges, transportation access primarily.
And how about limited industrial uses?
The same. Limited industrial manufacturing uses follow train lines oftentimes, but once again, they also have employees that need to access the property. Once again, the 309 connector serves that purpose.
Where does the county comp plan indicate that infrastructure improvements should be directed?
Infrastructure should be focused on areas of non-residential development. Once again, the 309 connector serves that purpose. And you can see from the map, the 309 connector will encompass that whole section of the LI zoning and that solid block of the township.
In your opinion, what would the impact be of taking away approximately 35 acres of industrial zoned land in this location?
Once again, you begin that process of eroding away that non-residential core of the township, and at what point does that end? Does the next property come in and say, well, we're contiguous to residential development, and then the domino effect continues, and you just erode a taxable business from the township, and you continue that process of continually rezoning residentially.
Board members, I'd like to direct you to the exhibit under tab 6, please. Mike, with regard to regional planning, what zoning is located directly across Township Line Road in Franconia Township?
It's industrial zoning.
And does the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code say anything about proposed development of municipalities being compatible with the existing and proposed development and plans contiguous portions of neighboring municipalities?
Yes, Section 301 requires regional planning efforts with contiguous municipalities.
Do you think that this proposal is consistent with Franconia's existing development or current zoning?
No.
Why not?
Once again, you have a residential property in a solid block of light industrial zoning, and immediately across the street in a neighboring township, you have another solid block of industrial zoning.
And how do you respond to the issue that Franconia may have approved a single-family development in their industrial zone?
Well, once again, they do have a solid block of industrial zoning. I don't agree with it. I'm aware of it. But once again, it's the same situation in Franconia. You begin that process of eroding away your non-residential core.
Did you have an opportunity to review the Indian Valley Regional Comprehensive Plan?
I did.
And how's that plan relevant to this property?
It's relevant because Franconia Township is included in the Indian Valley Regional Comprehensive Plan, and it immediately abuts this subject property in Hatfield Township.
Were issues raised by the Regional Comp Plan concerning goals and objectives?
Yes, they were.
All right. Board members, directing your attention, please, to Exhibit 7. Mike, Exhibit 7 is the Indian Valley Regional Comp Plan future land use. It's figure 46. Is Hatfield Township a part of the comp plan?
It is not part of the Indian Valley Regional Comprehensive Plan, but it immediately abuts it.
And how is that adjacent area in Franconia designated in the comp plan?
As a designated growth area.
Does the land use plan in Indian Valley, the comp plan, show predominantly industrial uses in Franconia Township that would abut Hatfield Township?
Yes.
I'll ask you from a regional perspective, what does it appear that Franconia is doing with regard to its industrial base?
It looks like they're looking to encourage industrial development and kind of build that non-residential core, that rateable area of the township.
I direct your attention, board members, to Exhibit 8, please, which is the industrial marketing plan, the Indian Valley Industrial Marketing Plan. Mike, did you have an opportunity to take a look at that marketing plan?
Yes, I did.
What's going to happen in Hatfield Township in that area near Franconia?
The Indian Valley Industrial Marketing Plan is targeting industrial development in Franconia Township. It's inconceivable that that won't spill over into Hatfield Township and have a positive impact, considering it's the same zoning designation.
Is there a indication what they're looking for in the next 20 years in that plan? And I direct you to that growth area matrix.
Yeah, they're looking for an increase in non-residential and industrial development.
And how does that relate to spillover into Hatfield Township?
Because Hatfield and Franconia share a common border, so it's inconceivable that encouraging non-residential development in Franconia isn't going to spill over across the street into Hatfield Township. In fact, the Indian Valley the marketing plan, if you look on page 7 and 17, show that solid block of industrial zoning in Franconia, and also shows the proposed Route 309 connector as providing a major freight access.
Did you have an opportunity to drive around the site and to view not only the site itself, but some of the developments and streets around it?
Yes, I did.
Did you travel along Township Line Road from Cowpath to Penn Avenue, Souderton Pike?
Yes.
I want to talk to you briefly about the compatibility of residential development and industrial development. There's a section in your report, and you noted that there's compatibility of those two uses. Why are they compatible?
Hatfield Township has strict ordinance requirements. Section 2250-44F of the Subdivision Land Development Ordinance requires a permanently landscaped evergreen buffer. The zoning ordinance itself, Section 282-147, requires a 200-foot buffer from buildings, a 100-foot buffer from parking areas. So it's fairly significant.
So if this property would be rezoned to residential, does the property still abut LI-zoned land?
Absolutely.
Is that relevant, and if so, why?
It's relevant. Once again, it shows the compatibility, and it refutes the argument that residential is more desirable here because it is still going to abut industrial zoning.
Well, and you were present at the Planning Commission meeting, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall one of the Planning Commission members arguing that her preference was to give the residents along Cowpath Road residential behind them because it wasn't fair to have industrial there? Do you recall that?
I do.
In fact, one of the comments I made was that if you allow residential on this parcel,
LI zoning is directly behind it again. Isn't that true?
That's true.
So if this is rezoned to RA2, the fact is we will still have industrial up against RA2.
Correct.
All right. But the code does allow, am I correct, for significant buffers, things of that nature to protect residential development?
Correct.
Specifically, let's talk about the impact on the LI-zoned properties around this parcel if it were changed to RA2. What happens to the setbacks on the forced parcel?
Well, the forced parcel, currently under the LI zoning, is anticipating a 200-foot setback from any buildings that would be developed on the subject property. If the property is rezoned on the plan that was shown previously, it's only showing a 50-foot setback.
What impact on the mobile home park would there be if the site was rezoned?
Significant impact. I think the people that are living there, purchased there, understood what the zoning designation was immediately behind them. You know, this proposal completely changes that and that perception.
With regard to the County Planning Commission, I believe there was Ms. Bianzo, I believe there was a letter submitted tonight. We have not seen that. The County Planning Commission letter probably came in today, I would think.
Yes, just this afternoon.
Okay. Is it possible we could take 2 minutes to take a look at that letter?
Sure. I don't see why not. I have a copy if you need it. It was emailed to you today, Mark. And you emailed it to both Frank and Mark. It was probably after 4 by the time we got it,
It
right?
was likely well after 4, but it was mailed out as soon as we got it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I had left my office by 4 today, but so we'll just take a minute. Mr. Solomon, have you had an opportunity to review the County Planning Commission's May 23, 2018 letter with regard to this proposal?
Yes, I just looked over it.
I'm going to provide you the letter under the section recommendation on page 1. What did the County Planning Commission note?
We see no compelling reason to introduce RA2 residential district zoning to this portion of Hatfield Township.
And do you agree with that?
I do.
I want to talk briefly about the county plan again. When the zoning map amendment was initially submitted, Mike, did the proposal from a mapping perspective appear to fit in to this light industrial block in Hatfield Township?
No, it does not.
Why?
It's in a regular configuration. It's RA2. There's no surrounding RA2 zoning. It's a mobile home park. It's RA1. It's industrial. It just doesn't fit there.
In your opinion, would the proposal fit into other areas of the township?
Would the proposal...
Is it unique in any way that, does it really fit anywhere?
It seems like it's custom crafted for this specific property.
Is there any other RA2 property abutting this district?
No, there is not.
In fact, what are the abutting districts?
It's zoned RA1, industrial and mobile home park.
And why is that relevant?
Because I think from a mapping standpoint, RA2 just doesn't seem to fit with this block of the township. It doesn't fit with the surrounding properties. From my opinion, it appears to be a spot zoning type of situation.
Does it appear this ordinance was drafted specifically for this parcel?
Yes.
All right. When you take into consideration the proposed ordinance regulations, and you saw there were frontage, yards, coverage requirements, height, parking, do they seem as though they would fit into another area of the township?
Seems like it's custom crafted for this property. You don't even, you not only have map amendments, but you have text amendments. So it all seems like it's packaged together to specifically fit this parcel.
The size of the parcel, am I correct, is 34.91 acres?
Yes.
Does the size of the parcel that the applicant's attempting to rezone give you any reason for concern?
It does. In fact, once again, the ordinance has a 30-acre minimum, and this property just happens to be, slightly over that. So I think it's custom crafted for this specific location.
You had an opportunity to review the applicant's fiscal impact study, correct?
Correct.
What does that reveal in terms of the impact of the development on the township and the school district?
Significant impact to the school district. It's a $462,000 loss, nearly $500,000, which the taxpayers here are going to have to subsidize.
If the property were to remain LI and be developed as LI, what would the impact on the school district be then?
Significant from a positive standpoint. There'd be no school-age children, so the school district would obviously see a significant positive revenue.
Now, Mike, one of the witnesses was testifying this evening, and he said, but that's true with any residential development. You always have costs for the school district. In fact, there's a lot of residential zoned land in Hatfield Township, correct?
Correct.
This is different, isn't it? Because it's not an issue of having residential development where the planners for the county have proposed various areas for residential development that they understand would have resulted in costs to the township potentially or the school district. Is this different because it's already LI zoned land that we're simply trying to change over to RA2 land?
Correct. So if you look at it from a school district standpoint, you go from a positive revenue under the current zoning designation to a negative. And getting back to my discussion earlier, you start that process of eroding away the light industrial district. You start losing your ratables, and you start, all the residents, once again, have to start subsidizing residential development if you keep that chain going.
Like I joke at times and I say, they're not making any more land. LI zone land, do you believe to be valuable in a municipality?
Absolutely.
Does it create a tax base for a municipality?
Absolutely.
And under this proposal, this township would lose 35 acres of its valuable land directly on the 309 connector?
And take a loss to the school district, correct.
If the temple this evening, there was testimony about the possibility they had considered leaving. Now they may stay, depending, how this application would go. But certainly nothing keeps churches, temples, synagogues from staying on sites, and often they may move. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
If the temple were ever to move, what would the zoning, the underlying zoning, be for this parcel?
It would be RA2.
And ultimately, the township would end up with RA2 zone land on its 309 connector.
Potentially, correct.
Not the best planning, would you submit?
I would agree with that.
No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Bartle? I had marked that county letter as one of the exhibits at the beginning of the hearing. Yes, it's B13. B13. Yes. Frank, can you use the mic, please?
Mr. Solomon, you're here tonight testifying for the Forced Family Partnership, is that correct?
That's correct.
And as such, you are being compensated by them for your testimony this evening, is that correct?
That's correct.
You're being paid as you're here.
That's correct. As we all are.
But it's your testimony. You're testifying here tonight.
Correct.
I'd like to just preliminarily test your testimony to some extent with respect to Board Exhibit 13, which is the May 23rd, 2018 letter of the Montgomery County Planning Commission. Now, you were asked to summarize that letter, and you said, you read, "We see no compelling reason to introduce RA2 residential zoning to this portion of Hatfield Township." Isn't that the section you read?
Correct.
And what you didn't read to this board was the first line, which says the Montgomery County Planning Commission can support the application of residential land use zoning to the subject tract. Isn't that what their conclusion really was with respect to this property?
That's what it says.
Okay, so when you then told this board subsequently that you agreed with their conclusion that RA2 was not the correct zoning or may not be the correct zoning, you didn't tell this board that what the Planning Commission had actually recommended was a rezone to residential, did you?
I told the board what I said, that there's no compelling reason to introduce RA2 residential zoning to this portion of Hatfield
And you
Town.
didn't tell them the real conclusion that the Montgomery County Planning Commission reached, did you, Mr. Solomon?
Well, I was also just handed this letter tonight, and I didn't have the opportunity to
Well,
read
now
3
you have
pages.
the opportunity to read it. Will you tell me if the real recommendation of the County Planning Commission is that the property be rezoned to residential?
Says the Montgomery County Planning Commission can support the application.
That's the conclusion. Now look at the first. With respect to the recommendation, it says the same thing, doesn't it? Recommendation is the Montgomery County Planning Commission can support the application of residential land use zoning to the subject tract. The part they disagreed with was the R1 versus the R2, not whether it should be residential. Isn't that right, Mr. Solomon?
That's what the Planning Commission letter says,
Okay.
without any basis or supporting documentation as to why they came to that conclusion.
Right, so now you're disagreeing with the Planning Commission rather than you agreeing with the Planning Commission in their conclusion. Isn't that right, Mr. Solomon?
I think that's a play on words and on what section, who's...
Oh, I don't think it's a play on words. I think the board clearly understands what you did in your testimony and what you're doing now.
And I think the board clearly understands that I was just handed this letter tonight.
But you came to a conclusion. You were given time to read it tonight. It doesn't take much to read it. You left out the sentence that was before the sentence you read to them. Didn't you read down the letter?
Gentlemen, the Montgomery County Planning Commission letter speaks for itself. The board can read the letter in its entirety and draw its own conclusions. I think we can move on with the testimony.
Okay. Then this particular letter and the recommendation of the Planning Commission with regard to the change of the property to residential flies in the face of your analysis of the Planning Commission documents, doesn't it?
Rephrase that question.
You have a Planning Commission that has recommended the rezoning to residential. Isn't that different than what you suggest that their documents would recommend?
I think I have some supporting documentation. The Montgomery County Planning Commission has one sentence that says they can support the application with no supporting basis or backup documentation.
But the County Planning Commission has all of the documents you referred to. They have their comprehensive plan. They have the document from Indian Valley. And by the way, is Hatfield a party to the Indian Valley Comprehensive Plan?
Franconia is.
Is Hatfield? That was my question.
Not that I've seen, no.
Okay.
But it immediately abuts, and they share, a common border.
Okay. And with respect to Franconia, are you aware of what the use is to the property with the water tower on it that is directly across the street from the subject property? Are you aware of what the use of that property is going to be?
I think you alluded tonight that it's going to be a residential development.
It's a residential development. Did you check in Franconia to see if it had been rezoned as a residential development?
I didn't check. I was made aware of it, and once again, like I've said, I disagree with that. It's the same situation as you have here in Hatfield.
But whether you disagree with it or not, that is in fact the case. So doesn't that fly in the face of your analysis with respect to the Indian Valley plan? And what the Indian Valley plan would yield for that property?
I think you're looking at one property in one township.
But I'm looking at the property that's directly across the street in the neighboring township from this property, aren't I?
You are?
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the connector road. You will agree with me that a property that is on 309 is different than a property that is on the 309 connector. Isn't that right? Different locations.
They are different locations, yes.
Okay. And there is no changing of the location of the subject property, only a change in the proposed type of road that will pass by it. Isn't that correct?
That's the type of road. It's a major road. It's a major project. And as the Indian Valley Comprehensive Plan shows on page 17, it shows the 309 connector, and it shows
well, answer my question. The location of the property. I want to. Mr. Zipfel, he's gone way off of what I asked him. What I asked him was whether the location was being changed or whether the type of road was being changed.
Stop me from interrupting, so, you know.
But I think that question was clear. Do you have that question, Mr. Solomon? Are you able to answer it?
I think Township Line Road becoming the 309 connector, there is a difference between the two.
What is being changed? The location of the property or the type of road that passes the property? It's a real easy question, Mr. Solomon.
The type of road.
Thank you. So the location remains the same, obviously.
Correct, but it now has access on a major connector.
Oh, okay, that time you cut him off. Let's let him answer the question. Mid-sentence.
I'm just saying, with the 309 connector, you at that point have a major connector access to the property. It's different than the situation today.
The location remains the same.
The location of the property, that's correct.
And the distance from the location of the property to Route 309 proper remains the same. Isn't that true?
The distance remains the same, but the accessibility does not.
By the way, the 309 connector that we're talking about is a two-lane roadway, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. Are you aware of whether the funding has been passed for this connector at this point in time?
I don't know all the funding scenarios. I just know that it is in design and targeted for construction.
It is in preliminary design until the end of 2018, or was in preliminary design until the end of, to the end of 2017. Isn't that right?
I know it's in design. I don't know the specific dates.
You don't know preliminary, final, or anything else?
I do. I don't know specifically where it is in that status.
And you don't know what the funding may be for the roadway at this point in time?
I'm not aware of the funding, no.
So without being aware of the funding, we don't have any guarantees that that roadway connector is ever going to be funded or built, do we?
I don't think you ever have any guarantees on a lot of things.
Okay. You're familiar with the Route 202 bypass and how long a period of time it took to get that roadway from the initial phases to the ending?
Yes.
That was 40 years or more, wasn't it?
A long time.
Right. And they had preliminary outlines for 2- and 3-year proposals and the like, didn't they?
They did, and now the road's built.
Right. From its initial proposal in 1960 to being built in the 2000s, wasn't it?
But it's still built.
Okay. All right. So you're suggesting then that maybe these landowners should sit on this land for 40-some years and wait for the connector road to come through. Is that it?
Just saying it's targeted, it's inevitable.
By the way, since you know something about 202, is that built in the location it was originally proposed?
I know the nature of the roadway did change over time.
Okay. The location changed, didn't it?
It did.
Okay. And the properties that were originally condemned for the roadway are still viable properties today, aren't they? Some of them, the roadway never went through them at all. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, so with respect to your testimony, you testified at length as to the documents of the Montgomery County Planning Commission, yet we received a letter of recommendation of the change in zoning. You testified as to the Indian Valley regional plan and the industrial locations that were adjacent to this property, and we then learned that the property immediately across the street has been rezoned to residential. Do any of those things change your opinion as to the fact that this property may not be then in the proper location for an industrially zoned piece of property?
Nothing changed my opinion.
Nothing. So it doesn't matter what the Planning Commission says, doesn't matter what Franconia did across the street, that based upon the information that you had, you're sticking with your conclusion despite the fact that the facts have changed.
The facts with the Montgomery County Planning Commission letter are one sentence. They have no supporting documentation as to how they came to that conclusion. I would say my report and my testimony is more comprehensive than the County Planning Commission letter.
How about the last County Planning Commission letter that agreed with the change of the zoning here from industrial to residential? Did you have an opportunity to take a look at that?
I did review that map, and that letter, and they actually based it on a generalized land use map that takes all of Montgomery County and takes 1/2 of an 8.5 by 11 page and map and says that this parcel should be rezoned based on that map.
Okay, so we're talking about 2 County Planning Commission letters, and you disagree with both of them?
Absolutely.
By the way, you're aware that the local Planning Commission also, on both occasions, recommended to this board to change the zoning from industrial to residential. You're aware of that?
I'm aware.
Okay, and that's enough. Let's, if I can, all right, can we pull up here? I don't know who's, there, yeah, there's, subject property on this plan, and across in the lighted area, that's the area in Franconia Township that has just been rezoned to residential. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
On the subject property, or near the subject property, Mr. Forst, or the Forst Family Partnership, owns a fair amount of land surrounding the property in question. Isn't that true?
Correct.
He owns the mobile home park, doesn't he?
Correct.
And that's used residentially, isn't it?
Correct.
And the property on the side of the property that would be not the side where the temple is, and not the Cowpath Road side, but the other side. There's forced property along there as well, isn't there?
I don't know exactly, his parcel and property boundaries.
And they're all residential uses along there, aren't they?
The mobile home park is a residential use.
What about along the other leg of the property where Forst owns property? Aren't they residential uses as well?
I don't know what section you're referring to.
If you look at it from Cowpath Road and look beyond the property, looking from Cowpath Road to the property and look beyond the property, that section, isn't that residentially used as well?
I'm not aware of that. I just see the LI.
You don't know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Do you know of any industrial uses that Mr. Forst has put to his property, either on the mobile home side or on that other side that we just referred to?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay. Now, you are aware of the fact that along Cowpath Road, there are various residential homes there, aren't there?
Correct.
Okay. And that also, those areas are also along the proposed connector highway that you spoke of. Is that, or, I'm sorry, the connector road that you spoke of, isn't that right?
If you're talking about the properties on Cowpath Road, they're in the vicinity of the connector, not on it.
Okay. Mark, do you have that document? Yeah. No, I'm sorry, I was asking Eric. I apologize, Mark. Let me show you what has been marked as A3. Excuse me, as, I guess this would be, would you mark these Forst 3 or? Yeah. Yes, F3. F3. Let me ask you to please take a look at F3. Now, isn't the connector road in the yellow, I guess that is?
Yes.
Okay. Doesn't that connector road in yellow go right past those residential properties that are along Cowpath?
Yes, I believe that's related to intersection improvements.
Okay. So the connector road does go past those residential properties, and there are residential properties specifically on the connector road as opposed to the subject property. Isn't that right?
Existing residential properties, that's correct.
But they're still going to be along the connector road if the connector road's ever built, aren't they, Mr. Solomon?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you testified on direct examination that the rezoning of this property could lead to an eroding away of the industrial district throughout other parts of the township. Isn't that what you said?
Correct.
Who would have to make those decisions?
Commissioners.
So essentially what you're saying is if the commissioners decided this evening or sometime in the future to change the zoning of the subject property, that they might not have the good sense to stop there if stopping there was appropriate. Isn't that really what you're saying?
I think what I'm saying is that if this property is rezoned, then the next property comes in, there's more of a compelling argument to rezone it. So it's not going to end, it's just going to be a domino effect.
All right, and you're saying that they perhaps wouldn't have the good judgment to stop where they should stop. Isn't that effectively what you're saying?
I didn't say that.
Well, I don't think he did answer that, Mr. Zipfel, but I'll withdraw the question. I think the board gets the point.
I think they do.
Now let's talk about the RA2 and the reasons for that. You did hear tonight that the RA2 rather than the RA1 was recommended by township staff, didn't you?
Correct.
And you did hear that the reason for that recommendation of the township staff was because of the fact that there is far more RA1 in Hatfield Township than there is RA2, and so it would put these provisions as applying to less property. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. But I think it logically doesn't fit with this property. If you look at this map, it's RA1, it's mobile home park, it's LI, and then you're just going to fit a piece of the puzzle as RA2. It just doesn't fit.
Mr. Solomon, the fact is that the three pieces that are being put in here are the cluster, the special exception, and the conditional use. they could be put in either RA1 or RA2 and come and get the exact same result. Isn't that correct?
Potentially. I mean, you can make all sorts of ordinance amendments to custom fit to a specific property.
Well, you could essentially put the same language in that is being proposed for the RA2 in the RA1, and you'd get the same development, wouldn't you?
Potentially.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Solomon, I know you didn't have a chance to read the review letter, but on page 2, where it says review comments, can you read item B to us, or read it and give us your opinion on that?
Sorry, page 2.
Item B, on the review comments.
On the County Planning Commission letter?
Yes.
Light industrial zoning in Township. The rezoning of the subject tract will result in a reduction of lands within the Township currently zoned LI light industrial. Accordingly, the Township should assess whether or not it is appropriate to allow a gradual, piecemeal erosion of lands reserved for light industrial uses, such as manufacturing, warehousing, and research laboratories. In addition, municipal officials should pay attention to those residentially zoned properties which currently abut or lie adjacent to parcels that are LI zoned. It is recommended that further thought and study of the Township's future land use goals and objectives be undertaken with respect to this issue.
That's in the county review letter.
Correct.
And that's basically what you were saying to us. Is that correct?
Without having seen their letter.
Okay. And you can look at item C also if you like.
Appropriateness of RA2 residential zoning. We see no compelling reason to introduce RA2 residential zoning to this portion of the Township. You'd like me to continue to read it?
No, that's fine.
Anything else, Commissioner Hughes?
No.
Okay. Other commissioners?
I just have one question. A lot of words have been said since you stated this earlier, so I'm not sure whether you can even recall it. You mentioned the benefit of this is a business tax?
No, I think real estate tax in general, what I'm saying is a non-residential use, you have no school-age children. So there's going to be no adverse impact to the taxpayers. There'd be a positive benefit. In this case, the taxpayers here, yourselves included, are going to subsidize this development to the tune of nearly $500,000.
Anyone else? Anything else, Mr. Capuccio?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Now is the time when we see who in the audience would like to make a statement or have a question. What I'm going to ask of you is that if one person says something and we can get a lot of people who agree with it to raise their hand and indicate that they agree, I'd like to do that, looking at that it's 10:30 right now and we're all slowly melting. I think that might help everyone. Let the board, this is legislative, so the board sitting up here as elected people, and we have lobbyists in front of us, basically. You have a lobbyist here and a lobbyist here, both trying to convince the board to do what they wish. So the formality of being sworn in, stating your name, giving your address isn't necessary. So we just want to get a flavor of what the group is thinking. So, and feel free to run up to the podium if you have something you'd like to say. And if there's a number of you that want to make comment, if you could line up there by that fire extinguisher, that would be great. Thank you.
Good evening, or should I say good night. My name is Bijal Patel. I'm 23 years old. I attended North Penn High School and have lived in the Hatfield Township all my life. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak tonight and support our community. I have been going to the BAPS Temple since it first opened and have actively volunteered as a youth coordinator ever since. I love both living and worshiping in the township, in the Hatfield Township, and I'm thankful that the temple has been there for support and empowerment. And I have grown academically, professionally, and spiritually. The temple has given our community a center to teach positive values, enrich the youth, and nurture better citizens to build a better community in Hatfield. As our temple activities improve, so does the need for more youth activity rooms and space to facilitate this growth. The plan that is in front of you tonight to expand BAPS and create the neighborhood is rewarding and wonderful. My mom is sitting here with us tonight and has told me how open and welcoming Hatfield was to my family when she first decided to move here many years ago. When I asked her if she could have gone back and chose somewhere else, she said no. She was so thankful that everything the township has done for both us as residents and at the temple was great. I hope you look favorably on this plan so other families like my own can have a wonderful experience of growing up in Hatfield. Thank you.
Okay, that was very eloquent. Does anybody agree with that statement? You want to raise your hand so the board can understand? Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead, ma'am, you're up.
I just have a couple sentences. Instead of having other family members come to the podium, I'm going to speak for the Walter family. The Walter family has been waiting a long time to sell the property at 3515 Cowpath Road to settle their mother's estate. We have been patient and respectful to the board at all times, but it's time for a decision to be made. The presentation made on our behalf shows undeniably that the zoning change makes sense for this property. Therefore, we respectfully request the board to approve this plan. At this time, I would like to ask family members, friends from BAPS, and others who live in the township to raise their hands if they support the plan submitted for this property. Thank you.
Could you state your name, please, ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry, Carol Walter.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm Tina Sowitz, and I live on Claremont Drive. I'm in favor of approving this rezoning and development project for the Walter property. Over the years, I have attended many township meetings and have learned more about the workings of these types of projects. This particular project seems to be taking much longer than many others. If traffic is an issue, well, that's just a given in our township, but that hasn't stopped from approving these types of projects. The last two in particular, Fortuna Crossing and the development at Snyder Square. Neither of these developments have outlets for all the backed up traffic that collects on a daily basis. The Walter property affords an ideal location for the development as it has two easy access outlets for traffic, Route 113 and Gotchell Road. I know this as I do travel that area often. I have seen how traffic easily disperses when there's a backup in that area. If traffic isn't your concern, then what is? Incredibly detailed planning and discussions have taken place for this particular project for a very long time. Adjustments and modifications have been made as well. Making decisions for the good of our township should be approval for this development, as it will bring more revenue into our township for the continuation of upkeep and progress. I ask that you approve this project in a timely manner so things can begin to move on and progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Schiff. I live on Claremont Drive. And I just had a couple of brief comments. I'm in support of rezoning the Walter property to residential. And just three very brief comments. I know that traffic is a big concern. I live in the township, I drive the roads, and I know how bad traffic is. I don't think we can really control how much traffic is going to be on Cowpath Road. Other townships are going to develop and send more traffic to Cowpath. And just tonight we learned that Franconia is building the residential community across the street. So I don't think we can keep traffic out. It's how do we manage traffic. I don't think we can prevent new developments from coming, whether it's in our township or others. I also think that if the board votes no because of this residential development causing traffic, it kind of sets a precedent that what do you do for any future development in the township? Will we always vote no on any other future residential because it's going to increase traffic? I just think that's a bad precedent. And my very last comment, I know there's a lot of concern about lot size. We have a half-acre property. It's very nice to have a larger property. But I also know a lot of people don't want a bigger property. A lot of people want more home, less property to maintain. So a quarter-acre lot, which sounds like what 10, 11,000 feet is ideal for a lot of people that want the home but not the property. So I think we should have options like that in the township. I don't think lot size should be a deciding factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
My name is Faye Denoff. We just moved into the mobile development 3 years ago. Most of the people in there are like retired, and we don't feel like our taxes will go up because they have to put 65 houses in there. Well, I'm happy for the temple. I think that's great that they would do that for them. But I mean, I think you should think about the other people in the area, because we're living on a limited amount of money, and there's a lot of people in this mobile home that live on a budget. And I just think that, why do they have to put 65? Just squeeze them all in. I don't think that's right. If they could go and have a smaller amount, I know Bill would love to have some of the property, sell some to him, make it a little bit smaller. I just think there's another way to do this.
And by a show of hands, who's, instead of clapping, raise your hands if you agree with her. Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Larry.
You have a last name, Larry?
Lafredo.
Okay, thanks.
And
It's
with
just Larry.
Faye, and we've been there for about 3 years, like she said. I have kind of a different take on things. I've been in construction all my life, and I've been a contractor. And I know what it's like when you guys start building 65 houses inside a development there. You're going to have concrete trucks running up and down Cowpath Road. You're going to have the building lines. You're going to have, I don't know where your perk test came up, but as you start putting basements, 65 basements into that parcel, it's like dropping ice cubes into a glass. The water table rises. So people on Cowpath Road, when their basements start to flood, I want you to think about that. And also, with as the construction comes through, the roads are going to be full of mud. When it rains, they're going to be tracking mud up and down the road. So who's going to pay to have the street cleaners every day coming through, cleaning up the Cowpath Road, cleaning up Erstein, and cleaning up all the other roads? So that's another consideration. Plus, like we said, we're all living on limited income. So to raise our taxes with 65 new homes, plus they were talking about the cars coming through with two-car garages. You have 65 of them. It's 130 cars that are in the garage, plus what's all parked around. I don't know where they're coming up with 1 car per day, but it sounds like it's going to be a whole lot more traffic than what they're talking about. So that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you, Larry.
My name is Bill Forst. All you guys know me, ladies. We have 3 projects in the township now with townhouses, okay? That's almost 200 houses. We're having the seminar, which is the E.B. Loudenslinger School, is going to be tear down. They're going to put 120 units in there. And the church that owns the building has a dormitory down the street from, and they want to put 11 low-cost housings in there. So, the population here is getting a little bit more. So the Durstein Road, it's proposed for the Durstein Run to put their 3rd building up eventually. Okay, and then the Balmy's property, they've had meetings on it already for 100 acres of housing there too. But the roads aren't getting wider, the roads aren't getting better, And if this residential goes through, the township highway crew has to maintain the roads and take care of the open space area. So, and across from on Township Line Road, there's a high tension line goes right over the corner of the Waller's property. And if you look over on Franconia side, there's at least 2 high tension lines with all these big angles sticking up at them. And down the road, 1,000 feet, there were 2 quarries that were filled up by Oliver and Al years ago. And it's all in that, it's in a Superfund. It has Keysby and Madison in there, Lansdale too, and Sharp, and the drug company. Okay, so the only other thing we have is the design for 309 bypass is supposed to start in 1920. And Mr. Superfund, yeah, okay. Mr. Rosenthal from Wayne, he is buying this piece of ground and he's going to get it approved, and you won't see him around our township anymore. And he'll sell it to a developer, and that's not right either. So there's 2 of the Waller's properties that are still going to be zoned industrial, which is originally part of the farm. All the homes on the Cowpath Road were all part of the farm. My dad bought 10 acres from the farm when he started the mobile home park. Okay, the Wallers group, there's 13 children in the Wallers group, and 2 of them live in the township. 11 of them live all over the United States, and that's all they want is money out of the residential homes, besides industrial. There's a petition out here that was formed in 2010 with 185 signatures of taxpayers and people that are living in Hatfield Township that say, don't change the zoning. If the township approves this, we have the school children now on Durstein Road have to be transported all the way over to Menson Township. And that's not right. The grade kids would love to go to Hatfield Elementary School. And also, we haven't had a tax increase in 4 years in Hatfield Township because we have all this industry and that are paying taxes to the township. We have at least 4 big projects in our township now so that we won't have to raise taxes in the next couple of years. And there are lots more industry coming into our township. That's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone have something new that hasn't already been said? Any new stuff, please, people. Thank you.
Hello.
What's your name?
My name's Kara Imes. I live on 3228 Penn Street. That's on the north side of the subject property. These are two new statements I just want to put because that's personal, and my family and I live there. So we hear the BAPS you guys celebrate, and that's awesome. There's distance between us, like, no problem. But when you only have 2 acres and 65 houses, think of all that complaint. Like, we don't care because we're distance, but I just want to say, like, that's pretty close distance, and we hear you from all that distance away. Also, one more thing. Living on Penn Street, even with the amount of traffic we have now, there's always cars in our fields, in front of the farmhouse. There's always accidents. Adding 65 more houses, plus their kids growing up, it's gonna be a little crazy there. But I just wanted to put that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. At this point, we will accept all the exhibits on the record, A1 through A13, the board exhibits B1 through B13, and the forced exhibits F1 through 8. All of those will be accepted on. There's a motion in order to close this hearing.
So moved.
Don't go anywhere, anybody. Okay.
Motion by Vice
second.
President Hughes, second by Commissioner Rogers.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Put our hands up.
Yeah. All right, next, at 10:46, we're going to open a conditional use hearing. And Mr. Bartle, I'm going to maybe take a little of your thunder out of your application just because of the hour, and there are a lot of people here, and we all have day jobs. So the motion's in order to open a hearing for the conditional use application. Is there such a motion?
Chair's making the motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. This is a different hearing altogether. This is a quasi-judicial application. The board is sitting as judges to see whether or not the applicant can meet the criteria of the ordinance, in particular, ordinance number 678. Conditional use is authorized by ordinance number 678 at 282-32E. The criteria for the conditional use is contained in 2 sections, namely 38.1 and 38.2, and then there's a reference to section 205, the general criteria for a conditional use. Mr. Bartle, I'm assuming you're going to incorporate the record that we just closed by reference relative to the standards required by ordinance 678. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm going to ask for an incorporation of the 2 prior hearings as well as the hearing that was just concluded.
And is it your position that the exhibits and the testimony...
All exhibits, all testimony, everything that's in the record for the rezoning in its entirety be incorporated into the conditional use hearing.
And it's your position that those exhibits and that testimony supports compliance with the conditions and the criteria as I've just listed them in those particular sections, is that right?
Yes, just the sections in question, 232, 32E, and I believe it's 232, 38, 1 and 2, and 282, 205. It's the Township zoning regulations for the RA2 residential district as we've requested it to be amended to allow the cluster development by conditional use, and the sections that provide the specific criteria for cluster developments, and the sections that provide development standards for cluster developments, and the Township's general criteria for conditional uses as contained in 282, 205 of the Township zoning code as it currently exists.
And I see that the witnesses that testified at the prior hearing are all still present in the room. Is that right?
They are, and they'll certainly answer any questions. I would just like to ask Mr. Kennedy to come up with me, and I have some pre-marked exhibits. I'd like to admit into the record A1, which is the conditional use application, A2, which is the agreement of sale in a redacted form, A3 is the sketch plan, A4 is the buffer detail plan, A5 is the curriculum vitae of John H. Kennedy, AICP. A6 is the fiscal impact statement. A7 is the environmental impact statement. and A8 is the transportation impact study without the appendices. I believe the appendices are in the prior record.
I have a list of board exhibits. They all match yours, but for two. So I'm going to only mark two exhibits for the board. B8 is the Montgomery County Planning Commission review. No, we don't need to mark that because they didn't comment about the conditional use in that letter. All right, so there'll be one board exhibit, and that'll be the proof of publication advertising this hearing. I will let the record reflect that the property was properly posted and the advertising was properly made. So the questions for Mr. Kennedy, please.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I assume since the board has accepted Mr. Kennedy as an expert witness in the area of land planning and zoning, that still stands for this hearing. Is that correct?
That's true.
And Mr. Puccio, you agree? No. Okay, very good. Mr. Kennedy, I asked you what you had done to prepare, and you said you discussed the proposal with the client. You reviewed the application, the municipality's planning code, as well as applicable township zoning ordinance, both generally and with regard to the requirements of the RA2 residential district, as we've requested the board amend them to this evening. And you've also visited the site and the surrounding areas. Is that fair?
That is correct.
All right, is it fair to say that you're very familiar with the application and the applicable zoning township ordinance and the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code provisions that apply to this application?
Yes, I am.
And to be clear, your statements in our presentation tonight is conditioned upon this board amending the township zoning map and the RA2 residential district as we have requested. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
So your testimony applies in the event that the board approves the rezone that we just previously went through.
Correct.
Exhibit A3 is a copy of the current sketch plan that you prepared for this development, and you've reviewed that plan in significant detail in the previous hearings, and you confirm the accuracy of your statements there. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Section 28232 of the township's RA2 residential district is proposed to be amended, permits residential development using a cluster option. Is that right?
Yes.
And the specific criteria for granting the cluster option are contained in 28238.1. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
I'd like to review that criteria with you point by point. First, subsection A requires the minimum lot size of 30 gross acres held in single ownership. Does the Walter tract meet that standard?
Yes, it does.
And our site contains 32.44 acres after the transfer of the 2.3 acres to the BAPS Temple. Is that right?
That is correct.
Next, section 28238.1B requires that a cluster development be served by public water and public sewer, and we meet that requirement. Is that right?
We do.
Our residential development will have both public water and public sewer. Is that correct?
Correct.
Next, section 38.1C requires that at least 20% of the total developable area of the tract and all non-developable area of the tract shall be preserved as open space. Do we meet that criteria?
Yes, we do.
And 20% would be 6.49 acres. We propose 8.39 acres, which is 26% of the developable area of the tract. More or less, as the final plan would indicate. Additionally, much of the 2.3 acres that Envision is deeding to the temple will remain in open space, although that's not calculated as part of the 26%. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And that open space meets the design criteria contained in section 282-38E of the zoning ordinance. Is that right?
It does.
All right, I'm going to ask you then to briefly review the open space as shown on Exhibit A3, the updated sketch plan, and describe its design with regard to the ordinance criteria, as well as the benefit to the township, the neighbors, and the proposed community. And if you will, you can just review that in summary, since I think you pretty much did that in the prior hearing.
I think the testimony's there about the open space, its location, the quantity,
Very
how
good.
you propose it'll be offered to the township or owned by an HOA. We really should be able to skip through this stuff, guys.
Okay, very good.
Let me, Frank, I'm sorry, Frank and Mark, is there a significant amount of the criteria that you can stipulate to? Or is it easier to identify the, I'm just taking a guess, the 2 or 3 that you'd rather hear testimony about?
I think the record that we've incorporated by reference is the record we just closed, Mark, the one that you were here for, not previous.
And did I misunderstand then, Frank? I thought that you were saying you were moving for admission of all previous hearings, and I'm not even sure which hearings he was referencing.
I did what he said. I asked for all of them because all of them are in the record of the hearing that we just closed.
All right, then I have a problem. Mr. Capuccio is not able to cross-examine witnesses and look at exhibits that were part of a hearing from 2017, and this is an adjudication, so that matters, as opposed to a legislative process where it would be fine for all those exhibits to be let in.
You know,
so
I would agree with you, except that Mr. Force has been represented by counsel at every step of the way. The fact that he changed counsel, with all due respect to Mr. Capuccio, who's a fine attorney, is not our problem.
This is different. We're in a conditional use hearing now. The criteria is contained in the ordinance. The criteria was just described ad nauseum for 2 hours and 45 minutes tonight where Mr. Capuccio was here. That's the only record you need in order to substantiate whether or not you meet the conditional use criteria. You don't need the stuff from 2017. It's not relevant.
Tell me what your decision is with respect to what I'm allowed to have in this conditional use hearing with respect to what my motion was. If you disagree and you're going to knock out the first two, fine, just tell me that,
Okay.
and I'll be guided accordingly.
All right, great. I would say that the record that we just closed, the hearing on the two ordinances held this evening, that testimony is part of this record, and that your exhibit packet, A1 through 13, will be part of this exhibit packet for this hearing.
Without the reference to the prior hearings that took place last year.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, I understand.
Are we good?
Let me just then continue with my questions, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you.
And I'm sorry, Frank and Mark, I am not looking to cut you short. None of us are, but we're just trying to be as efficient as possible. But we understand your scenario, situation. This is your first time with us tonight. Understood. Take three.
Okay, we good? All right, let's go back on the record. Before we do, for the purposes of this hearing, Mr. Capuccio represents a neighboring property owner, Mr. Forrest. Is there any objection to party status for Bill Forrest by you, Mr. Bartle?
No.
Okay, great. What did you come up with, gentlemen?
Okay, if I can read into the record here and on occasion ask Mr. Kennedy a question, I think we can get this finished in just a couple minutes.
Great.
All right? All right, Mr. Kennedy, in section 282-38-2, it shows the development standards. Mr. Kennedy would testify, and Mr. Capuccio would agree that they meet the development standards contained in that section. I'm going to address a couple of them specifically, and we have an agreement that density requires no more than 2.2 dwelling units per acre, and what we proposed is 2 dwelling units per acre, which of course is less. The lot area, the required not less than 10,000 square feet and an average of at least 11,000 square feet, that we propose not less than 10,000 square feet, and that the average of at least is of at least 11,267 square feet, so we're compliant in that regard. And that the proposed development otherwise meets the requirements contained in 282-38-2 with regard to setbacks, building, and impervious coverage, and the other stated requirements. The Township Zoning Code also contains 6 general requirements for conditional uses in Section 282-205B, and we agree to that. The question for Mr. Kennedy is, I'd like to go through those individually. First, 282-205B1 requires that the applicant provide a market analysis showing need and impact of the proposed use. That analysis was presented during the rezone hearings, which have been incorporated into this here, a rezone hearing, which has been incorporated into this hearing through the testimony of the property owner, the presentation of two fiscal impact statements, and the testimony of Mike Samuels, who was recognized as an expert in the area of real estate appraisal, and Michael Borski, Jr., who was recognized as an expert in the area of real estate sales earlier this evening. Is that correct, Mr. Kennedy?
That is correct.
All right. In fact, the most recent fiscal impact statement is included in the exhibit package as Exhibit A6. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you have reviewed and confirmed the accuracy of that testimony and evidence as was presented at the previous hearings with regard to the need and impact of the proposed use. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, next is to Section 282-205B2, requires conditional use not be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. What is your opinion with regard to that? And it's my understanding that your opinion would be the proposed residential cluster development will not endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. In fact, the residential development will suit the surrounding area well and be of benefit to the community. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, the general criteria at Section 282-205B3 next requires that the conditional use not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the properties in the immediate vicinity or substantially diminish property values. Do you believe the proposed development will meet that criteria? And my understanding is you testify, yes, the development will fit in the neighborhood well and will have nothing but a positive impact on the value of the properties in the area. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Next, 282-205B4 requires that conditional use not impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding property. Do we meet that requirement?
Yes, we do.
Will you please explain why?
The proposed residential development on this property will not impede the development of any other land or affect the development of any other land located around the property. Some of the land around the property is already developed, and we've already discussed the BAPS property, which would potentially expand, but will not be impeded by this residential development. And properties to the north, which currently are zoned LI but are in a residential use, will not be harmed.
Okay. The next that Mr. Puccio and I have agreed to is Section 282-205B5. Requires adequate utility access, roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities for the proposed conditional use, and that we meet the requirement with respect to that. Briefly, I was going to ask Mr. Kennedy to review the plan and show the utilities, access, drainage, and other necessary facilities for the proposed development with regard to that requirement. Since our agreement, I won't do that. I'll just rely on the incorporation. Finally, 282-205B6 requires that the design contain adequate ingress and egress to minimize traffic congestion on public streets beyond what the normal impact would be by permitted use. That is a traditional residential development without the cluster option. Do we meet that requirement? And we have agreed that the answer to that is yes. The choice to design using the cluster option has no impact on the traffic whatsoever. 34. And with regard to traffic, we have provided a traffic impact study in our packet as Exhibit A8 that describes the traffic impact of the proposed development in further detail, and we have agreed that we have done that. The next question is one for Mr. Kennedy. Based on the factors we've specifically reviewed, does the applicant here meet the requirements for the conditional use as stated in the Township's zoning code as we've proposed it to be amended? It's my understanding your opinion is yes, that it does.
Yes, it does.
If granted the conditional use, does the applicant otherwise comply with all applicable zoning ordinance requirements? It's my understanding your opinion is that yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
You were present at the prior hearing on the requested rezone and my statements earlier in this hearing about the project. Do you agree with the statements that were made as they relate to the land planning aspects of the proposed project and this conditional use?
Yes, I do.
Is it your opinion that the proposed use is consistent with the zoning code's general purpose?
Yes, it is.
Do you believe that in all other respects that this plan and the has met the requirements as I've outlined them in your questioning?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. There were some conditions that you offered during the rezoning, and I'd like your opinion on 4 of them that I wrote down to see if they would be conditions in the event the board were to adjudicate this matter in your favor. Would you agree to them for the conditional use? Number 1, the widening that you described.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the right-of-way offer that you described would be a condition of the conditional use. Is that agreeable?
Yes, as we represented this evening.
And the traffic signal at the intersection of Cowpath and Durstein, along with the corresponding widening, would that be an acceptable condition?
Yes.
and that you would develop the property in substantial conformance with the sketch plan submitted at this hearing and at the rezoning hearing, including but not limited to the buffer shown on that plan?
Yes, subject to the modifications made through the land development process would need to be approved by the board.
Okay. And that's it for my questions. Mr. Capuccio, any questions, comments, or clarifications relative to the testimony that was just offered as agreeable to you?
No, thank you. Just to be certain that, again, the testimony then of Mr. Solomon comes in that previous record that you've introduced.
For sure.
No objection. That's certainly our agreement.
No other questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions by the commissioners?
Well, here again, you're asking us to rezone a piece of property and asking us to go with smaller lots than what we have in the township, other than a mobile home park. So I think we're going down a slippery slope if we're going to start going with smaller lots. So.
Anything else, Commissioner Hughes? Any other commissioners? Anyone in the audience have questions for Mr. Kennedy or any of the witnesses that are present this evening? Anyone in the audience like to make a statement about the application? You'd have to do that under oath, and you're subject to cross-examination. Anyone interested?
Anyone daring enough to give that a try?
That was not meant to be intimidating in any way. All right, let the record reflect, I see no hands. All right, we'll move all the exhibits onto the record as indicated, and motions in order to close this hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you very much.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your patience.
We still have a couple of, folks, if you're here for the rezone and you want to go home, go home. We still have a couple of items that we have to do before we close out the meeting, but we'll give you time to step outside into the hallway.
I don't think anybody's listening.
Oh, gosh.
How much?
No, you've got the budget meeting.
Budget meeting.
Thanks for coming out. Crazy, right?
Good luck, hope everything works out.
Yeah, you're coming out.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
All right, see you. I'll see you.
Take care. Yep.
Good.
See you in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. It's worth it. You're welcome. Nice job. Nice job.
Mike, good to see you.
Sorry to stomp on you a little, but
Bye, Frank.
Family's not here.
Right. True.
Carry out, fireman carry.
Got it. Thank you.
I need a big rubber band. Can we leave all this crap here?
All right, folks. Everyone can congratulate each other outside. All right, we have two action items that we're going to clear up, and yep, most people are outside. First is a tax appeal settlement for 2850 Bethlehem Pike. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Andrus. Ms. Solicitor, you have not had enough to do this evening.
This is a settlement proposal offered by the school district for 2850 Bethlehem Pike. It settles a 3-year dispute relative to the value of the property. In the end, it means a check to the township in the amount of $8,259 for the fiscal years of 2016, 17, and 18, and then that assessment is set. So it's our recommendation that you approve this stipulation.
So if we say yes, we get $8,000.
That's the bottom line, yes. And an increased revenue in future years.
Cross-examined.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. All right, we have a vacancy board appointment. Is there a motion for an appointment to that vacancy board?
So moved.
Who's the motion for?
Oh,
Mr. Kresge?
the crusty.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, yes.
There's a second. Okay, any discussion? Actually, I'm going to start. Mr. Kresge, do you understand that if you accept this position, you cannot be on any other commission or board? That is our past practice, so that we're not able to do that. Your predecessor was not in any other position, so that's a prerequisite. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Congratulations, Mr. Kresge. Thank you for waiting out the meeting.
Can't believe you sat through all of that.
I'd have Skyped it.
Called it in.
Don't worry, the check's in the mail.
All right. Citizens' comments. Any other citizen? The three of you, really. Are there any citizens' comments? No. All right. With that, I'm going to call it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please don't say anything. All right. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.